I'm waiting, Sparks. Why is this message from London the only one you haven't got a copy of? And why did Mr. Cregan wait until dinner time last night to give it to me? The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Look, what are you trying to prove, Kendall? You come busting in here asking all kinds of stupid questions when you got the message Colonel Hacking sent you all along. Now should I know why Cregan didn't pass it on when I gave it to him? Why don't you get out of here? I've got work to do.
Mulcahy, the wireless operator on the Tangmar, knew something, I was sure of it. Ever since I'd started asking him about the message from Hacking, he'd talked too fast. In some way that I hadn't yet fathomed, he knew more about Peter Slavin than he was prepared to admit. According to the message I'd received from Cregan, Colonel Hacking had wired the Tangmar to say that there was no connection between Peter Slavin and anyone aboard. But Dr. Lawler had started me thinking when he'd mentioned the possibility of Colonel Hacking's first message, saying that he'd arrested Slavin's killer in London, being faked. It was just possible that the second message had been faked. And if so, Mulcahy must have known about it. As I stood waiting for the wireless operator to answer my question, I could hear the steady throb of the Tangmar's engines as she plowed eastwards bound for Panama and Jamaica.
Oh, I don't know anything. You better take it up with Mr. Cregan.
I intend to, Mulcahy, but at the moment I'm taking it up with you. Are you willing to swear that this was the wireless message that came from London?
Of course I am.
The genuine message didn't incriminate someone aboard this ship. Someone you're covering up for.
Why should I do a thing like that? Be more than me job was worth to interfere with a cable. You ought to know that.
Maybe it was made worth your while to lose your job if anyone ever found out.
What do you mean?
Simply that a slice of the Wherryman fortune could easily recompense you for being beached.
Ah, you're out of your mind, Kendall. And I'm not answering any more questions, see? Just get out of here. Go on, get out.
Take my advice, Sparks. Find that copy of Colonel Hacking's message. I want to see it.
If I had it, I'd give it to you.
Find it. That's all. Come in.
Sparks, I want it. Oh, it's you, Kendall.
Come in, Chief. I was just coming down to the engine room to have a word with you.
Chief, Kendall's trying to claim the...
Shut up, Mulcahy.
Well, what's going on?
Why did you go down to Dr. Lawler's cabin and claim that you and Captain Goddard knew that one of the passengers had killed Peter Slavin?
Why did I what?
Now, look, Chief, I was with Dr. Lawler only a few minutes ago. He told me that you yelled something through the cabin door to him.
Well, of course I did. I told him that I'd make sure my engines didn't fail between here and Jamaica, so that he'd be brought to justice.
And that was all?
Well, if you don't want to take my word for it. If you'd rather take the word of a murderer...
That's easily checked. There are 2 guards on Lawler's door.
Well, they won't be much help to you. I spelled them while they went to eat.
What? Whose idea was that?
It was mine. They were only gone half an hour. It's the duty of every man aboard this ship to make sure that Dr. Lawler doesn't have a chance to escape, Kendall.
That message that Sparks gave you for me. You left the dining room last night and said you were going back to the engine room. What made you come past the wireless cabin?
I didn't.
You gave me the impression that Mulcahy had only just given you that wire from Colonel Hacking.
Did I now? Then you got the wrong impression. I suddenly remembered I hadn't passed it on and came back with it.
I see.
Well, you satisfied now, Kendall? What's the matter with you? You got the killer you wanted. Isn't that enough for you? You want to bring the rest of us into it, too?
After we sailed, Mr. Cregan, you told me you'd had a son. I asked you his name, and you didn't answer. You told me his mother had left you and had gone back to using her maiden name. What was her maiden name, Cregan? Could it have been Slavin?
I don't know what you're talking about, Kendall.
You haven't answered my question, Mr. Cregan.
And I don't like people prying into my family affairs.
How much did you pay Sparks or promise him to have him fake that message from Colonel Hacking and lose the duplicate? I'm waiting, Cregan.
Oh, I knew we'd never get away with it, Cregan. Oh, I knew we'd...
Shut up, you fool! You know altogether too much, Mr. Kendall.
It was you, wasn't it? You heard in Plymouth that Peter Slavin had been killed, and you decided that it must have been one of the passengers. You set out to wipe them out, one by one. Every person who stood to gain by the Wherryman will.
I wouldn't say any more, Kendall. And don't try anything, will you?
A gun won't help you now. Even if you get rid of me, Colonel Hacking will be waiting for you when we get to Panama.
That won't interest you, Kendall. Sparks, lock the door.
But, Cregan...
I said lock the door!
You were wrong, Cregan. There was no need to kill. Colonel Hacking wasn't lying when he informed me that he'd found the man who killed your son.
It was lies, all of it. Lies to try and save the lives of these money-hungry rats. To let them live and enjoy the money they'd stolen from my son, Peter.
Tell him, Sparks. You took the first message from Hacking. Tell him.
That was what the wireless message from London said, Chief.
I don't care what it said. You've got some rope handy, Marquis?
Listen, I don't want to be involved in murder.
Shut up! You were right, Kendall. Sparks did fake that second message from London. I've been waiting for that message, and Sparks wanted to pass it on to you just as it was. You know what it said? Peter Slavin was the son of your chief engineer, that was all. But it would have been enough for you, wouldn't it? You could have gone ahead and arrested me.
How did you get Sparks to play along with you?
Because he's a crook, that's why. He smuggled stuff through the customs, valuable stuff. Anything you lay his dirty little hands on. And if the customs knew, then you'd face a long term in jail, wouldn't you, Marquis?
I see. Well, just how do you plan to get rid of me, Cregan?
It was going to be done differently, but your cleverness is going to force me to change my plans. For the time being, you'll remain here in the wireless cabin. And then tonight, you'll get some swimming practice.
But you can't leave him here. Supposing someone comes in...
They won't find him. He'll be tied hand and foot. And a wee bit uncomfortable in that locker, eh, Sparks? Too bad for you altogether. All right. Start tying him up, Sparks, and shove a gag in his mouth. Jump to it, man, or I'll let you have it, too.
But, Captain Goddard, I know something's happened to Dirk. No one's seen him all afternoon.
Miss Challoner, I'm due on watch in a few minutes, and I'm trying to rest. Now, will you stop behaving like a woman and leave me alone? Do I have to act as nursemaid to every blasted officer in this ship?
Supposing he was right, Captain Goddard. Supposing Dr. Lawler isn't the murderer you've been looking for.
You don't start that again, or I'll... Oh, all right. What do you want me to do? Organize a search party? Where the devil do you think he could get to?
I know he's in danger, Captain. I know it.
Yeah, well, I'm due on the bridge. Who the devil is it?
It's me, Skipper. The chief.
Oh, come in. Something wrong?
No, I just wanted to know if you'd seen Kendall anywhere. He was coming down to the engine room to see me. Something about making faster time to Jamaica.
You see, Captain Goddard?
Chief, Miss Challoner seems to think something's happened to Kendall. How can she work that out with Lawler in custody? I'm hanged if I know. But maybe you'll talk to her, because I gotta get forward. As long as Kendall's on hand for the 8 o'clock watch, I don't care if he's hanging over the side, dangling his toes in the ocean.
You know, Miss Challoner, I think you're getting all worked up over nothing. You know, this voyage is getting us all down.
Then why did you come here looking for Dirk?
Well, the first officer spends quite a bit of time with the skipper, miss. Likeliest place to look.
I'm going to search the ship.
I wouldn't do that if I were you. It'd make Kendall look pretty foolish when he shows up.
But he was onto something. I know he was. He never did believe that Dr. Lawler killed Alona and the rest of them.
Aye, facts all point that way, miss. But you can't go against the evidence, can you?
Mr. Cregan, you've got to believe me. Dirk is in danger. And unless you help me, then I'm going to get Mr. Tuker and my father to search for him.
Look now, Miss Chandler. Look, you come along with me, lass. I'll take you back to your cabin. Kendall's probably making an inspection of the holes. As a matter of fact, I heard the skipper suggesting it to him only this morning. All right, Sparks. Put them down.
And no one saw us, Cregan. Dark as midnight here on deck.
Aye, that's good. Well, he'll be safe enough here in my cabin until we can get rid of him.
Anyone noticed he's missing?
Aye, Major Challoner's daughter. I had her talking to the captain at 8 bells this afternoon.
Yeah, we got to get rid of him fast, Cregan. If he's found in your cabin...
Aye, don't worry. He won't be. All right now, come on. Roll him under the bunk. Right under. That's it. That's fine. Well, no one's going to look for him there. And I'll lock my cabin.
Leave me out of it, will you, Chief? I don't think I will.
You'll be here at midnight, Sparks. Midnight, remember? You're going to have the privilege of dumping him overboard. My head ached. I was
was half choked with the gag in my mouth. As I lay there under the bunk and heard Cregan's plans to get rid of me, I had till midnight to work out some way of escaping in this passage of the Tangmar.
Course steady. Engines at full speed, Skipper.
Tell it to the second, Atkins. You better take over the rest of Mr. Kendall's watch, Harris. He's an hour late now. I'd better take Miss Challoner's advice and organize a search party.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Just get back here to my cabin by midnight, Malky. Then we'll carry Kendall on deck and get rid of him. Now get him back to the wireless cabin and keep your mouth shut.
I'd heard the distant sound of 2 bells tolling the hour of 9 p.m. as Cregan and Mulcahy, the Sparks, carried me from the wireless cabin to the chief engineer's cabin. I was lying under the chief's bunk, bound hand and foot and gagged, and cursing myself for the fact that I'd stumbled on the killer I'd been searching for, only to botch his arrest. I had until midnight to work out a way of escaping and apprehending Cregan before he decided to get rid of the remaining passengers. Dr. Lawler had been right in his theory about the killer and the motive of revenge. But he was under guard in his cabin, and I could expect no help from that quarter. Major Challoner was probably in his cups by now, and I couldn't see him wanting to help me in any way. Edwin Tuker seemed no longer afraid for himself, but my absence wouldn't cause him any concern. If I was to get help, it had to come from either Captain Goddard or Sharon Challoner. As Sparks left Cregan's cabin, I heard the door shut, and then it was locked from the inside.
All right, my interfering friend, Mr. Kendall. I think it's time we had a talk. And you can come out of there. I'll get the skag off ye. But one sound and I'll shoot ye.
Oh, thanks for small mercies. If you're planning to drown me, there's no point in strangling me first.
Just keep your voice down, Kendall.
That way I get to stay alive till midnight, huh? All right, I'm not a complete fool. You mind if I prop myself up against this?
No, not at all. I'll help you.
I feel even more helpless than I am lying there in the middle of the floor.
Is that better? That's good. You know, I don't bear you any ill will, but unless I get rid of you, then I can't go through with my plans, can I?
Good point. But what do I have to do to prove to you that Peter Slavin was killed not by anyone on this ship or any of the people you've murdered, but by the man arrested in London by Colonel Hackney?
If I thought that was true...
Well, you know very well it's true.
Unless I'm to gag you again, keep your voice down.
You know it's true, Cregan. I've no reason to lie to you now, but if you admit the fact, then you admit that you killed Miller, Lee Blake, and Ilona Federoff for no reason at all.
They deserved to die, each one of them. Ben Miller was a cheap criminal.
He wasn't a murderer.
He'd been in and out of prison all his life.
Is that why you chose him first?
He was the obvious choice. I saw him each morning up on the boat deck. He told me once that when he was carrying his swag, he could never sleep after sunrise. We talked up there on 2 occasions before I decided to kill him first.
But he was the one person aboard who'd never been to England. This was his first trip away from Australia. You knew that just as I did.
That was what he said. Would you take the word of a pickpocket? A lying, thieving scoundrel?
Oh, listen, Cregan. I could have told you weeks ago that no one on this ship killed Slavin. Why didn't you come to me and tell me that Slavin was your son?
I wanted to kill you too, Kendall. That was how Blake came to die. And as long as you were alive, it meant that I could be discovered and arrested before they all paid for Peter's death.
So you sneaked down to my cabin and waited, afraid that I really did know who had killed Miller.
There was rough justice in that, even. I hid in Miller's cabin until I had Blake leave your cabin.
It was me you heard leave, Cregan. Blake was still there.
Ah, but I didn't know that, did I?
How can you say he deserved to die?
Because he was helping you. Helping you to save the lives of people and you should never be allowed to live. Lice, with clawing, greedy hands reaching out for an extra share of the Wedderman fortune.
And you killed Lee Blake and he recognized you.
Well, he half-turned after I'd shot him. He had his back to me when I opened the door of your cabin and turned the light off. It wasn't until I'd fired that I'd realized I'd shot the wrong man.
You better make very sure of me at midnight, Chief.
I will. You'll have a cleaner death than your ideas of justice would accord me. And I understand that before you drown, your whole life passes before your eyes. I wonder if that'll be so in your case, or whether you'll just remember the things I'm telling you now.
Where did you get the knife that killed Miller?
It was his. He was very skillful with that knife, and it was very sharp. On each of the mornings I saw him up on the boat deck after my all-night stint in the engine room, he'd be whittling at a piece of wood. It wasn't hard to admire his handiwork and examine the knife. He handed it over to me with never a thought that it was to be the means of his death.
And you can sit there talking about this as if it was just something in the everyday round.
I can. And do you know why? Because it stops me from thinking. Thinking of Peter. He was a bonny lad. I didn't see him after the breakup of my marriage. I was at sea, and it was obvious that, even being the kind of woman she was, my wife could give him a better home than I. But I was to see him on this voyage.
That's why you let Captain Goddard talk you out of retiring. Talk you into making this one last trip.
Aye. When I heard that Peter was to travel to Jamaica to get his share of the Wedderman fortune, nothing would have made me swallow the anchor. Suddenly, all the years I'd wanted a boy by my side were over. I'd spent my last voyage with the lad, and I'd know at the end of it that I'd be well provided for.
And then you read of his death, huh?
I went ashore at Plymouth to meet the man who'd come down from London to examine the Tangmar's engines. I bought a paper and, well, they had his picture on the front page. It was then that I knew that one of the other beneficiaries must have killed him. I decided that not one of them would reach Jamaica alive.
And how did your son meet Victor Wetterman? How did he come to be included in the will? There was nothing sent from Jamaica about that. All the details of the other passengers, yes, but nothing about your son. How did he meet Wetterman?
I knew you'd want to know that, Kendall. And since it can't do you any good, I'm going to tell you. It was a long time ago when I was serving as a third engineer on the old Geraldton. You know, in those days, my wife used to come to sea with me.
Am I to take it, Captain Goddard, that you're blaming those of us present for the absence of your first officer?
You can take it any way you like, Major Challoner. But Kendall was due on the bridge more than an hour ago. And according to your daughter, he's been missing since early this afternoon. I want to know if any of you have seen him.
I'm afraid not, Captain Goddard.
I do not seek the company of Kendall from choice, I can assure you, Captain.
I am not here from choice either, Challoner. But if any of you know where Kendall is, then now is the time to speak up.
Perhaps he's fallen overboard.
Father, do you have to joke about it?
I do, yes. After all, you'll admit, Goddard, that Kendall doesn't exactly strike one as the logical successor to the mantle of Sir Francis Drake.
Kendall is a fine seaman, and he's not the kind of idiot who'd fall overboard in a calm sea. But he might have been pushed, eh, Major?
By me, is that meant to imply? Sorry, Captain. I've often felt like it, but no. No, my hands are clean. Now, Tuka is really the authority on this kind of thing, aren't you, eh, Tuka? At a time when he knew he must be picked up in a perfectly flat and mirror-like sea, he leapt overboard himself. Now, isn't it logical to assume that a man who would think along those lines would assist someone else to do the same?
I'd come to respect and admire Mr. Kendall.
Had? You mean that there's no reason to do that now, eh?
I don't mean anything of the kind. But while Kendall was on this ship, I felt safe. We all did, I think.
But he still is on the Tangmar. I know he is.
Female intuition again, Sharon. You know, my dear, firstly there was Lee Blake. Well, we all know what happened to him. Now there's Dirk Kendall. You know, I think you must be something of a Jonah, Sharon.
And where do you think you're going?
To my cabin, of course. And if you do locate Kendall, tell him I was most concerned. Good night.
Major Challoner, come back here.
Let him go, Captain Goddard. My father wouldn't be any help to us. We're wasting time talking. Can't we search the ship?
I'm more than willing to help in any way I can, Captain.
I've already been over the ship. Every place where a man might be hidden.
I have a suggestion, Captain.
What is it, Tuka?
Why not search in the places where a man might not be hidden? The unlikely places.
Such as?
The obvious places. The places which one automatically overlooks.
Let's start looking now, Captain Goddard, please. If we waste any more time, something dreadful might happen to Dirk.
In those days, I was happier than I thought any man had a right to be. A wife who loved me and a wee son. Peter was only 3 years old. And then we stopped to take on passengers and cargo at Shanghai. Victor Werriman came aboard. Well, do I have to tell you any more?
Is that the reason that you and your
I
wife...
saw them together. Something seemed to snap in my wife's brain when she discovered just who Werriman was. That he was a millionaire in his own right. You know, they say a woman at sea... Anyway, we parted company for good when we reached home.
And Werriman?
Oh, it was a joke to him. He found it amusing that anyone would take a shipboard affair seriously. Do you think I don't know why he chose the Tangmar as a vessel to transport us people to Jamaica? Oh, of course I do. He knew that I served aboard her, and he wanted me to know that he hadn't forgotten the name of Cregan.
But why didn't he leave part of his estate to your former wife?
He knew as I knew what she would do for money. He probably enjoyed the thought that it was Peter who was to reap the benefit of her anxious greed.
Feeling the way you do about women, Cregan, it wasn't hard for you to kill Ilona Fedorov then.
What was she? Was she a fine woman, Kendall? Was she? Did she deserve to marry a man like Dr. Lawler? Answer me that. Ah, no. She was a loose, loving... Don't say a word, Kendall. Unless you want to be killed now. Don't say a word. Who is it?
The skipper, Chief. We're looking for Kendall. Open up. I want to talk to you.
The chief engineer held the gun pointed straight at my head. Outside the door was a man whose help I could count on in bringing Cregan to justice. But how was I to summon that help? It looked like stalemate in this passage of the Tangmar.
It's the skipper, Chief. We're looking for Kendall. Searching the ship. Open up. I want to talk to you.
Don't make a sound, Kendall. If Captain Goddard finds out you're in here, I'll use this gun on you without a second thought. If you want to stay alive until midnight, keep your mouth shut.
The Tangmar plowed eastwards, bound for Jamaica and Savannah Lamar. And I lay on the floor of Cregan's cabin, bound hand and foot, staring into the barrel of the revolver in the chief engineer's hand. Outside the door, Captain Goddard waited impatiently for the chief to open up, while my mind raced as I tried to think of a way to attract Goddard's attention without feeling a bullet smash into me. The captain knocked again, and Cregan moved fast. The gag was shoved back in my mouth, and I was rolled back under the bunk. I heard the chief's steps move to the door, and then Sharon's voice.
Mr. Cregan, this is urgent. Please hurry.
Aye, I'm coming.
Chief, what the devil kept you, sir?
Oh, look, can't a man take 40 winks from this blasted tub without being disturbed?
It seems not, Chief. That darn fool of a first mate has disappeared.
There's no sign of him anywhere, Mr. Cregan.
I'm beginning to think that we might have been all wrong, Chief. About Lawler, I mean. It looks as if our murderer is still at large.
Well, has anyone spoken to Lawler? Maybe he knows what's happened to Kendall.
You don't think he might have... Oh, don't be daft, man. How could he? Locked in his cabin with guards outside the door?
Have you seen Dirk anywhere, Mr. Cregan?
Oh, no. No, not a sign of him. I just hope he's all right, that's all.
No one seems to have seen Mr. Kendall since he went to the wireless cabin.
What was he doing there?
Well, Mr. Mulcahy, the wireless operator, said he was in there talking to him at midday. Asked me if there were any further messages for him from London.
And then?
And then Kendall left the wireless cabin and just, disappeared into thin air.
It doesn't make sense, Cregan. How can a man simply vanish? Someone's got to have seen him since then.
Well, I wish I could help you, but I haven't seen him. Do you want me to help you look?
No, you're going back to your bunk.
Miss Challoner, there's something wrong.
Oh, no. No, of course not.
Come on, you two. Let's keep looking. It seems to me there isn't a corner of this darn ship we haven't been over.
Captain Goddard, there is the brig. You know, where you've got that man Jones locked up.
Now, why, for the love of heaven, would Kendall be down there?
Well, it won't hurt to look.
Oh, all right, let's go. But why Kendall would want to spend all this time talking with a rat like Jones, I'm hanged if I know.
I'll get that gag off you, Kendall. There. Well, I'm glad to see you've decided to behave sensibly. If they'd found out that you were in my cabin, it would have been too bad for them and for you.
You can't kill everyone on this ship, Cregan.
I don't want to. But you see, I've become used to killing. After the first time, the shock is never so bad. You can look at the man you've killed and not feel a thing.
Your only chance is to give yourself up.
And hang? Oh, no, Kendall.
Colonel Hacking knows all about you, the message that you destroyed. He's got your number, Chief. Doesn't matter where the Tangmar bursts, he'll be waiting. Getting rid of me won't help in the long run. You can't shake off a man like Hacking. He'll find you if it takes him years.
I very much doubt that.
How did you get that key to Dr. Lawler's instrument case?
The doctor is a man of habit. I've often seen him fingering that key and placing it back in the same pocket.
And you used it to get the scalpel?
Aye. I used Miller's cabin again. I had the doctor talking to Major Challoner and waited until the Major had staggered off to his cabin. Then Dr. Lawler said he was going to look for the guards who should have been on duty in the passengers' quarters.
I should have known why you weren't in this cabin when he went looking for you.
And no one knows better than I the time it takes to get here from the passengers' cabins.
Time enough for a loner Fedorov to die.
Look, how you spend your last few hours alive is your business, Kendall. But asking me questions won't help you.
It helps me to realize what a blind, trusting fool I've been. 3 people have died needlessly because I thought you wanted to help me.
Time after time I've wanted to burst out laughing at you, suspecting one person after another. Goddard, Challoner, Tuker, and the doctor. But never me.
What is it that's driving you, Cregan? You know you've killed for a reason that doesn't exist. Your son's murderer has been arrested by Hacking. Why go on with this?
None of them will live to inherit the Whittam and fortune. That money is tainted. Amassed by a man who used it as bait to smash my marriage and...
You're insane, Cregan. Your mind is warped and twisted with killing. Why don't you admit you've developed a taste for it? You're like a mad dog that's tasted blood.
Shut up! Shut up, you hear?
But when it comes to your turn, you're going to have time to think, Cregan, to know that every breath you draw brings the rope that much closer. It won't be sudden for you, not something that you won't have time to believe before it happens. Oh, no. You'll see the judge place the black cap on his head, and you'll stand and face him and hear the words that condemn you to only 3 weeks more of...
I told you to shut up. Do you think I can't see your game? Do you think I don't know what you're playing at? Trying to make me shout you down so they'll hear outside. Well, it won't work, Kendall. And no one's going to hear.
You're smarter than I thought, Cregan. But getting me up on deck is going to be difficult. By that time, I'll have nothing to lose.
Mulcahy will be here at midnight.
Oh, yes. Mulcahy. Now, there's a weak reed, if ever I saw one. Do you honestly think he'll obey your orders and come?
He knows that if he doesn't...
Oh, yes, the customs people are smuggling, but that would mean only a prison sentence. For murder, he'd swing with you. He's got plenty of time to think about that, Cregan, and by midnight I think he'll crack and spill the whole story to the captain.
That still won't save your life. No one gets through that door, Kendall, unless I open it. And it won't be open again until Mulcahy gets here. If he doesn't...
Well, Cregan, it's usual for the condemned man to be granted a last request. You'll find that out for yourself. But I'll settle for a cigarette.
Aye, all right. I'll light one for you and I'll put it in your mouth. But I'm not untying you, Kendall.
Thanks. You know, Cregan, when you've got only 2 hours to live, it's amazing how clearly you can think.
Well, a deputation, eh? Come to see old Jones. Don't tell me you let me out of this stinking hole, Skipper.
Just answer one question for me, Jones. We're looking for Dirk Kendall. Have you seen him at all?
Now, what would I want with Kendall? The less I see of that copper, the better. Wasn't for him, I wouldn't be locked up, would I?
Please, Mr. Jones, if he's been here...
No one's been here, no one at all, except the swine who brings me something to eat.
Are you quite positive, Mr. Jones? You see, it's very
Oh,
important to...
Mr. Jones, not just Jones anymore. You must be worried about this mug, Kendall. What's happened to him? Someone stick a knife in his back? If they did, then good luck to him.
I'll see you never get another ship, Jones. There won't be a deep water man will allow you near the gangplank.
That wouldn't be any skin off my nose. None of you'd listen to me when I tried to help you. When I told you the murderer was. Now you tell me you've arrested the wrong man, this Dr. Lawler fella. He never killed anyone in his whole life.
You know who the murderer is?
Of course I do. I told Kendall. Was this fella Cregan?
You rat,
Oh,
Jones.
yeah. Before that, I said it was the skipper here. Cried wolf, I did once too often, miss. And that's why no one will believe me.
Have you any proof, Mr. Jones?
I got the proof of my own eyes.
You saw Mr. Cregan killed?
Not see him kill, miss, but I saw him washing blood off his hands when I was working down in the engine room, and he tried to tell me he'd cut himself. Funny thing was that there was no cut. I had a look at his hand afterwards, and there wasn't a cut anywhere.
Well, why didn't you tell us this before?
Because you all thought I was making it up. Everyone was so busy calling me a liar, they didn't want to hear what I had to say. Even Kendall, he was the same.
If you're lying now...
All right, so don't believe me.
When was it that you saw Mr. Cregan washing his hands?
After Miller was killed?
And you kept quiet about it till now? What are you up to, Jones? You've got some scheme in your head to make trouble. What's the percentage in accusing a man like the chief?
Nothing else to do, Skip. Locked up down here with all day to think. Things start to fall into place. Well, it has to be this bloke Cregan. He's the only man, apart from you, Skipper, who can go anywhere he likes on this stinking ship, any time he likes.
I've known the chief engineer for years. We've sailed together across the 7 seas. I'd trust him with my life.
Then you'd be a bigger fool than I thought you was, Skipper, and that's saying a lot.
Oh, come now, Mr. Jones.
Of course, Cregan did come up to the bridge when Kendall was down here with you. And he told me that you'd made another accusation against me.
And you come storming in just as I was giving Kendall the whole story. Looked like I was trying to talk myself out of another tight spot, didn't it? Like when Kendall discovered it was me who'd attacked him on deck that night. And I said you'd put me up to it, Skipper. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I know. But Cregan knew darn well that I was onto him. And that's why I started the trouble in the engine room, because we weren't going to be allowed ashore at Papeete. Well, I was scared of Cregan. He could have seen to it that something happened to me. I've been expecting it all the time, locked up in here, waiting for Cregan to come and let me have it. Yeah, but I guess he was just biding his time.
Captain Goddard, I noticed it at the time when we were talking to Mr. Cregan outside his cabin. He locked the door as he came out. Why would he do that? Unless there was something or someone inside he didn't want us to know about.
I didn't know how close help was as I puffed at the cigarette Cregan had given me. And the pattern of death fell into place on this passage of the Tangmar.
I don't believe it, Miss Challoner. No matter what proof Jones thinks he's got. Cregan a murderer. Dash it all, I might as well admit I killed Miller myself. To convict a man I've sailed with for more than 20 years, I need a lot more than the word of a wharf rat.
With you out of the way, Dirk Kendall, I'm in the clear. No one can tie me in with the murders. And your Colonel Hacking can search to his heart's content. He'll be looking for a Scots needle in a South American haystack.
Cregan was mad. He sat rocking back and forth in the chair opposite, where I lay, propped against his bunk, the gun cradled in his arms. The Tangmar plowed eastwards for Panama and Jamaica, only a few days from the canal, while I strained at the ropes on my wrists. Days were of no concern to me now. In 2 hours, I was scheduled to take a weighted swim downwards. The whole picture, the jigsaw of murder and horror, had fitted into place. But outside the brig, and unknown to me, Captain Goddard was faced with a puzzle he didn't want to admit he could solve. Cregan was talking again, leaning forward, almost drooling at the realization of how completely he'd fooled all of us.
You'll only be one more, Kendall. And one more won't make any difference, not now. The rest of them will join you. Only you won't be concerned with that.
And just how do you plan to do that?
You forced my hand. I haven't time to wait and dispose of them one by one. Oh, no, not anymore.
Just how do you see yourself? As some kind of avenging angel, killing on behalf of your murdered son and the wife you once loved? No, Cregan, all I can see is a maniacal old man. You've even forgotten the motive that started you killing. You kill for the satisfaction it gives you because you're...
Shut up! Do you hear me? Shut up!
Go ahead. Use the gun. Or have you suddenly realized that one shot will bring the whole ship's company racing to your cabin? Well, what are you waiting for, Cregan? Not Mulcahy, now, surely. He won't come. It'll be just as I said. He'll go to the captain. Confess his part in this whole monstrous scheme.
Go on. Go on. Talk all you want, Kendall. Whatever happens, you won't be here to know.
How are you going to finish them all off? Scuttle the ship? Send them to join me in Davy Jones' locker? What about Goddard? Your lifetime friend. How will you convince yourself that it was necessary for him to die? And the rest of the crew? And Jones, locked down in the brig, waiting to die? I hope while you're waiting for Hacking's hand to fall on your shoulder, you'll sleep well at night.
Aye, Jones. I was clever about Jones. I fooled you all. And you played right into my hands, Mr. Kendall. I knew Jones had asked you to talk with him, and I guessed why. You see, he saw me after the killing of Miller.
You mean he did know?
Why, of course he knew.
Then he wasn't...
Go on, Kendall. Finish it. Lying, was that what you were going to say? No, he wasn't. But he'd already accused the captain of murder. Then he tried to start a mutiny in the engine room. Who was going to take his word against mine, eh? All I had to do was rush to the bridge and tell Captain Goddard that Jones had accused me again. I knew I could leave the rest to John's righteous anger and your stupidity.
Let me tell you about Hacking, Mr.
Shut up
Cregan,
about Hacking!
But I want to tell you. You know, he never fails, no matter how long it takes. And in that musty office on the banks of the Thames, he'll go over and over this case. And he'll find you no matter how clever you are.
I said shut up.
Why did Jones keep it to himself for so long about you?
Because the fool was going to try and blackmail me. I knew that, and he knew that I knew. Jones is a lazy, ambitious man. Ambitious for money that his brain could never earn him. He would have been quite content to sit back and let me pay for his silence. Would you care for another cigarette, Mr. Kendall?
Yes, I need it.
How does it feel to know that you've failed? That I was always that one step ahead of you?
Not pleasant.
Here's a light.
So it's to be South America, eh? After Panama or before it?
You know, this ship will never reach Panama. I have the lifeboat picked out, and I can make for any one of 100 ports where no questions will be asked.
To live with the memory of the most swinish crime ever committed on the high seas.
To live with the memory, Mr. Kendall, of the duty I discharged in wiping out all trace of the people who gained by my son's death.
Now will you believe me, Captain Goddard? You've admitted yourself that apart from Mr. Cregan's cabin, there isn't another place we can look. Wasting valuable time. Dirk is in danger. We all saw Mr. Cregan lock the door of his cabin as he came out to talk to us.
I know that, but supposing we're wrong. How do you think I can explain to Cregan that I thought he was a killer, and on the word of Jones?
But Captain Goddard...
You keep out of this, Tuka. Your only interest is in making sure your record as a poisoner won't be held against you. If you can arrange for someone else to stand trial, then...
Captain Goddard, that's enough. Mr. Tuker has helped us search this ship.
All right, then. Perhaps Kendall met with an accident. Perhaps he did fall overboard.
Anything rather than face the truth. Is that it, Captain Goddard? Because you still refuse to believe that a member of your crew might be a murderer. It doesn't matter that Dr. Lawler is under arrest. The dirt might be lying in your chief engineer's cabin. Nothing matters except that the scandal should be confined to the passengers' quarters. That way you can wash your hands of the whole thing. Your beloved Tangmar will still be the ship you've always known. And...
Now, wait a minute, Miss Challoner.
Wait? Oh, no, Captain Goddard. There's been enough waiting. Unless you agree to search Mr. Cregan's cabin now, then I shall go there alone.
It will be my privilege to escort you, Miss Challoner.
Captain Goddard, sir.
Oh, for heaven's sake, Mulcahy, do you have to pester me now? Can't you see I'm busy?
Oh, I think you should let me say what I have to, sir.
All right, man, what is it? Trouble of some kind?
In a way, sir. But before I tell you, you've got to agree to protect me, sir, to make sure that nothing happens to me.
What in the name of all that's... What is it, Sparks?
It's about Mr. Kendall, sir.
Kendall? You mean you found him? Good man. So I should search Cregan's cabin, eh, Miss Challoner? I should barge in there and accuse him.
Yes, sir. You should, sir.
What?
He is there, isn't he, Mr. Mulcahy?
Yes, miss. And at midnight, I'm supposed to knock on his door and help... Well, I'm supposed to help Mr. Cregan get rid of him.
Has he been hurt in any way? Dirk, I mean.
Not when I last saw him, miss. He was knocked about a bit in the wireless cabin, but apart from tying him up, I didn't really hurt him.
You were in on this, Mulcahy? In it with Cregan?
Not until yesterday, sir. You see, Mr. Cregan found out that I'd been, smuggling, you see, sir, and, I had no choice but to do what he wanted. First, it was that message from London. You know, about Colonel Hacking saying that Cregan was Peter Slavin's father.
Slavin's father?
Yes, sir. Mr. Cregan made me fake a message to put him in the clear. Then he took it down and gave it to Mr. Kendall.
Well, Captain Goddard, you've got your proof. And this isn't the word of Jones.
You're relieved of duty, Mulcahy. Go to your cabin and stay there till I send for you.
No, wait, Captain Goddard. I've got a better idea.
Well, what do you want me to do with him, Tuker?
Quite simple, sir. Mr. Mulcahy is supposed to go to Mr. Cregan's cabin and help him to dispose of Mr. Kendall. Now, why don't we go along with Mr. Mulcahy and follow him in and overpower Mr. Cregan?
Oh, I couldn't do that, sir. Oh, I don't want no part of this.
For 2 pins, I'd ram the Morse key down your lying throat, Mulcahy. You'll do as Mr. Tuker says, do you hear me?
Captain Goddard.
It's all right, miss. I'm only getting a gun. To deal with a man like Cregan, I think I'll need it.
He's alive, Mr. Mulcahy. You're sure of that?
Miss Challoner, Mr. Tuker, I owe you both an apology. Now, if you're ready, let's go. Start walking, Mulcahy. And when you get to Cregan's cabin, knock and call out to him. I want him to unlock that door without suspecting anything.
Tell me, Cregan, who is the next one on your list? Major Challoner?
Who would miss him?
Then why not him instead of Ilona?
I was keeping him back. I watched him drinking to steady his nerves, drinking more every day while he hoped that he'd live long enough to get his hands on that money. I wanted him to reach the stage where he thought he was safe, and then... Wait a minute.
What's wrong, Cregan?
I thought I heard something. As if someone was creeping along the companionway.
You're imagining things, Cregan. There's no one out there. Do you mind ashing this cigarette for me?
Wait a minute. Don't say a word.
Nothing.
Aye. Well, perhaps not.
You know as well as I do that Mulcahy
I'm
won't
tired of
come.
talking with you. It's time you were gagged again, Kendall.
With a cigarette in my mouth.
You know, Kendall, I admire your courage. Here, let me take it.
This is for all of them.
Captain Goddard! Goddard, it's me, Kendall. I'm in Cregan's cabin.
All right, Kendall, you ask for this, I'm going to kill you.
Cregan, it's Mulcahy. Have a look, quick. You want the old ship's company now, I'm here.
My kick with bound feet had sent Cregan spinning back against the wall, but he was up in a moment, his hands groping over the cabin decking for the gun he dropped. And then Mulcahy knocked on the door. Whichever way it went, the gun or drowning, death seemed suddenly very close at that moment in this passage of the Tangmar.
Mr. Cregan, it's Mulcahy. Have an up, man. Come on, Chief, let me in. It's urgent. They're onto us. We gotta move fast.
So Mulcahy wasn't going to show up, eh, Kendall? You can thank your lucky stars he did. When he knocked on that door, he saved your life. Until midnight.
It was 5 bells on the 8 till midnight watch. And with Mulcahy's arrival, my last hope had gone. Once again, I tried forcing the ropes, but they held fast. It seemed an age since I'd faced Cregan that afternoon in the wireless cabin. And now, though I knew the whole story, I'd never be able to arrest Cregan. Just before Mulcahy knocked, I'd lashed out with my feet and sent Cregan sprawling back against the cabin wall. But he'd scrambled to his feet and was about to shoot when the wireless operator knocked. There was a grim jest in that somewhere. Mulcahy had saved my life by arriving to help Cregan toss me overboard. As I watched the chief engineer move to the door and unlock it, I was in no mood to appreciate any humor. The case of Victor Wherryman's will that had started some 3 months before with the murder of Peter Slavin was over as far as I was concerned.
They're onto us, Chief. They know all about it. Jones told them. We're going to get rid of Kendall. It's got to be now.
All right. Did anyone see you coming down here?
Yes, drop it, Chief.
What?
The gun, drop it.
Mulcahy, why?
Don't try it, Chief. Move back here, Mulcahy. Come on, man, move.
So you know.
I don't want to be the one to kill you, Chief, but unless you drop that gun... Pick it up, Chuka.
Yes, rather.
And keep it pointed at Cregan.
That will be a pleasure.
All right, Miss Challoner, you can go in now.
Dirk, you all right?
Well, I will be when you get these blasted ropes untied.
Here, let me.
Skipper, I could kiss that weather-beaten face of yours.
The man's delirious. Come on, Cregan, let's go.
Where are you taking him, Skipper?
I should think he and Mulcahy will enjoy each other's company. They can have that pleasure in the brig.
Well, what about Jones?
He's in Miller's cabin. I had him moved there.
Oh, fine. I'll need Jones as a witness.
I know.
Thanks, Sharon.
You can't put me in with Cregan, Skipper.
Shut up. You'll have lots to talk about, I should think.
Mr. Kendall, would you mind taking this weapon? You know how
Yes, of course. Thanks.
Mr. Kendall, it's still a long way to Panama. I wouldn't be so sure if I were you that you've finished with me.
I haven't even begun. I want the story down in black and white, Cregan, and your signature on it. It should make interesting reading for Colonel Hacking.
All right, Mulcahy. Cregan, start moving.
I'll come with you, Captain, just to assist.
Glad to have you along, Tuka.
Oh, Dirk. Dirk, I thought... I was quite sure that you were... I didn't think I'd ever see you again.
It's all right, Sharon. It's all over now.
I can't believe it. I thought... I knew it was Mr. Cregan from the time I saw him lock his cabin door as he came out to talk to us, when we first came looking for you. But Captain Goddard didn't want to believe it.
He was the one man none of us thought of. I even accused Jones of lying when he told me that it was Cregan. Somehow the role of mass murderer didn't seem to fit that solid, brusque kind of... Well, anyway, he told me the whole story. He was gloating about it. He won't hang, Sharon. I think he'll spend the rest of his days in Broadmoor.
Dirk, do you remember once I asked you to kiss me, and you wouldn't?
Well, you know, the thing about Cregan is that... What did you say?
I'm asking you to kiss me.
Well, Sharon, I want to tell you something first. From the time that I was in that cabin, waiting for midnight and knowing that it was to be the finish of everything, I found that...
Go on.
Well, it seems a pretty drastic kind of way to find out that you love someone. To be tied up, waiting to be chucked overboard. But that's what happened to me.
Dirk.
If you can bear the thought of being married to a not very efficient policeman, I'd very much like to marry you.
Dirk Kendall, you sound so pompous.
Oh. Do I?
I'd very much like to marry you. What kind of proposal is that?
Oh, yes. Well, you see... Oh, dash it all, Sharon, come here.
Oh, darling. Oh, Dirk.
Now I can face telling your father. Oh, Sharon, I've just remembered Dr. Lawler. He's still locked up in his cabin. We'd better go down to him.
2 days to Panama, hey, Kendall?
Yes.
Dirk, I have a favor to ask of you.
I know what it is, Martin, and the answer's no.
Just 5 minutes with him, alone.
Nope.
You know, it's incredible, Dirk. I keep expecting her to appear, to come around the corner of the deck and to find her with the wind in her hair.
Martin, we were all wrong about Cregan, but that doesn't make me blame myself any the less. I only wish there was something I could say.
Time, you know, the great healer. That's what we doctors say. I've only just realized how empty those words must sound to the hearer. Have you spoken to Challoner yet?
Oh, no.
I'm not so preoccupied with my own affairs that I've lost the use of my eyes, you know. I hope it works out, Kendall.
It will.
I'd better wish you luck when you speak to the Major.
I'm feeling I'll need it. Never been any love lost between us.
So there's just the three of us now. Chuka, the Major, and myself. Well, at least we know we three can reach Savannah Lamar.
You'd rather not be going, is that it?
I'm not going.
What?
I'm leaving the ship at Panama.
But why?
I don't want any part of the Wherryman estate. Not now.
Oh, listen, Martin, that's downright...
Is it? I know all about the will and the provision that we should arrive per the Tangmar, but... Well, if Alona was alive, I'd have gone on with that. But I'm flying back to Sydney.
Oh, look here, Lawler. Colonel Hacking's coming aboard when we get to Panama. I've had word from London. He plans to take Cregan back with him. Look, why not discuss it with Hacking first?
No, thank you. If you can't change my mind, I don't see how a perfect stranger could.
Good morning, gentlemen.
What?
Oh, hello, Tuka.
Am I interrupting something?
No.
It's just that after talking with Major Challoner for any length of time, I find I need the deck in order to cool myself down.
Well, what's wrong with him now?
Nothing wasn't wrong with him when we started this voyage. But now he's pointing out how any fool could have seen that Cregan was the guilty man from the beginning.
Oh. You know, Martin, I remember a dinner a few nights ago. They were the identical words he used about you.
Well, of course, I don't profess to ostent an entirely blameless life by any means, gentlemen. But the Major, I find, is able to cause me to think along homicidal lines for the very first time in many years.
I know exactly what you mean, Tuka. Oh, well, I think perhaps now I'll beard him in his den, as it were.
He's not exactly in an approachable mood, Mr. Kendall.
Oh, that's too bad. I'm not exactly in an approaching mood, so watch out for fireworks.
I do wish that young man success, Dr. Lord. He's a very charming young lady.
Yes, she was. Very charming. Will you excuse me, Chuka?
Why? Why, of course. Yeah, of course. Sometimes, Edwin, it seems odd how safe you were in prison. It was so peaceful. 15 years of security, and now... Edwin Tuka, you must not think along those lines. It's time now to write the dear Martha. Come on, my lad.
Come in. It's you, Kendall. I've been expecting you. Well, come in. I won't ask you to sit down because I imagine what you have to say requires that you remain standing.
Major Challoner, this is not a scene from a Victorian melodrama.
No. It appears to me to have all the ingredients. Young man rescued in the nick of time from death who was about to ask for the hand of a young woman who imagined herself in love with him.
Yeah, I had intended to ask.
Well, don't waste your breath. It's out of the question.
What?
Sharon has already acquainted me with this shipboard affair you appear to have been enjoying.
I intend to marry Sharon, Major.
Then we've reached an impasse, since I intend that you shall not.
Well, how do you plan to prevent it?
The fact that I appear to have lost a great deal of my influence over Sharon since we came aboard this ship should not make you hopeful, Kendall. Once we leave the ship, things will be much the same as they were. And a third share of £1 million can be very useful in that respect.
Aren't you awake yet to the fact that your daughter can't bear the sight of you?
Since that is exactly the way I feel about you, we have quite a problem, haven't we? I shall move heaven and earth to prevent a marriage between you and my daughter. Is that clear, Kendall? My only regret in this entire sorry business is that Captain Goddard did not attempt to rescue after midnight. Now get out of my cabin!
Kendall! Kendall, are you in there?
Yes, Skipper.
It's Cregan, Kendall. He's escaped. That damned maniac is climbing to the masthead, screaming about vengeance. He's up there in the cross trees, yelling his head off. We've got to get him down, Kendall.
It seemed incredible that Cregan could have escaped. But then I remembered something he'd said 2 days before when we took him to the brig. That it was still a long way to Panama. With Cregan on the loose again, anything could still happen in this passage of the Tangmar.
By the greed for money you've no right to possess. You're rats, all of you. Rats who will die for greed.
The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
We've got to get that crazy fool below decks again, Kendall. He's braced up there in the cross trees, screaming his fool head off about vengeance.
How the chief engineer had escaped from the brig. And as we raced for the deck, I could hear Cregan's voice myself. At the top of the companionway, the skipper and I stopped and looked up at the black-jacketed figure at the masthead. He looked for all the world like a vulture, with his reefer jacket winging back behind him in the wind and the thin-necked head thrust forward, watching us with venom in the staring eyes. Somehow, I had to find a way of getting the chief below decks to the safety of the brig. Colonel Hacking would be waiting in Panama, and he'd want the chief engineer alive.
Kendall, you're a fool! Do you think I'd spend the rest of the voyage cooped up like a rat? From here, it's my turn to pass judgment on all of you. From here, you look as puny as the rest of them, Kendall.
Cregan, listen!
I've tried talking to him, Kendall.
Oh, wait, Skipper.
Cregan! Either you give yourself up or I'm coming up to get you.
Then I can take you with me, Kendall. Up here, I'm the master.
Dirk, he only wants to take you with him. If you go after him, you'll both go overboard.
Well, I'm going all the same, Sharon.
Get back, Kendall. Get back, you fool. All right, then, cuss you. But while you're climbing, Kendall, remember one thing. I'm only waiting to take you overboard with me.
Oh, Dirk, be careful.
What's all the excitement, Captain Goddard? Can't you use your own eyes, man? Kendall's gone after that criminal lunatic in the cross trees.
Really?
Go back! Go back while you have the chance, Kendall!
I'm taking you down, Cregan. You're going back to England to stand trial.
Sharon, I should say that your chances of marrying Kendall now are even slimmer than they were.
Challenger, get below. Get off this deck.
My dear Captain,
Get below, you venomous swine, before I knock your brains out. Do you hear me, Major?
Just a little closer, Kendall. A wee bit closer, that's all. Another few feet, and I can swing us both into the ocean.
How did you Escape, Cregan.
It was simple. The fool you left to guard the brig came too close to the bars.
And Mulcahy?
Mulcahy? I offered him the chance to come with me, but he stayed there, huddling in the corner, afraid, terrified to move. I didn't kill the guard, Kendall, but he won't want to stand guard duty again for a time. And you...
Get too close to him, sir.
You hear that? You hear that? They're worried for you, Kendall. They know I'm not bluffing. Even John knows. You were a fool to climb up here.
Why, I could pull you down, Cregan. From this close, I could force you to let go of the mast.
All right. All right, bring your hands a wee bit closer. Closer. Come on. Afraid, Kendall? Afraid that my boots might crush your hands? How do you think you'll get me to climb down?
Because you're afraid to hurl yourself off. You've been looking down ever since you climbed up here. The deck looks further away each time.
You think I'll go back to the brig? Go back to the brig knowing that each ton of my engines takes me closer to prison?
Well, you can please yourself, Cregan, but if I go down without you, it'll be to get a gun.
You're bluffing again, Kendall. It wouldn't do for you to kill me. There are too many questions that only I can answer. Too many loose ends that must be neatly tied off before your case is complete. Don't come any closer!
If I have to, I'll stay up here with you, Cregan. Watching you grow weaker, tireder. You won't be able to close your eyes. You have to keep a firm hold on the mast. Feeling your hands numbing as you cling on.
Get back on deck! Leave me alone!
Much better to come down now, Cregan. You're not a young man, and you'll find that killing yourself isn't easy. Until you're sentenced, you can always hope for life. Your trial may be weeks, months away.
Oh, if I could only take you with me!
You can't. I'm not coming any closer. I'll stay here below you until you beg to be helped back to the deck. What's wrong, Cregan? The deck seems even further away now, doesn't it? And when night comes and the wind carries the voices of your victims to you, you'll...
Don't! Don't! I can't bear the night. They crowd in on me. Up here I thought I'd be safe, able to forget them, but... I can see their faces all around me. Helena Fedorov, Ben Miller and Lee Blake. It's as if they came through the bars of the brig, crowding in to gloat over me.
Let's start down, Cregan.
Yes. Yes, Kendall. Help me down. But first, promise me you'll keep the faces away. Keep them away.
Are you ready to start down?
I'm ready. I thought I'd be able to take this way out, Kendall, to end it cleanly. To finish it. It's only a matter of a few minutes and I've beat the lot of you. And I've cheated all of you. Help me back to the deck, Kendall, please. Please help me.
How did you get that maniac to come down, Kendall?
Skipper, we won't have any more trouble with Cregan.
I hope you're right.
I've seen it happen before. You know, a man of his kind goes on killing and it never seems to matter after the first time. As if the act of killing dulled any sense of right or wrong. And then, when it's over, and the murderer's trapped, he starts to think back, to relive each act of murder, to experience for the first time the horror of what he's done.
You think Cregan's going through that?
I know he is.
I still can't believe it was Cregan. I know he's guilty, but I was so close to Cregan, I feel as if I was a murderer myself. Now I just want to get him off my ship.
Well, we should make Panama comfortably in a couple of days, and if hacking is waiting, then you'll have Cregan off your hands.
I'll have to see Dr. Lawler before we get there. I owe that fellow an apology. You know, Sharon Challoner was the person really responsible for saving your life, Kendall. She practically bludgeoned me into breaking into Cregan's cabin. Even then, I didn't want to suspect Cregan.
Well, it's time I was going on watch, Skipper. With Cregan under lock and key, I'll enjoy my 4-hour stretch.
I suppose you'll be leaving the ship with Cregan too, eh?
Oh, I don't know. It depends on hacking, I suppose. I'd much rather stay aboard for the run to Jamaica.
Why?
Oh, a number of reasons. One of them is concerned with Colonel Hacking's reaction to the way I've handled this case. I don't think he'll be handing out too many laurels.
Is that the only reason?
No.
I thought not.
You know the Major won't hear of it.
If it was me, I'd tell that old shellback exactly where he could go and marry the girl anyway.
I tried that. He'll do his damnedest to prevent the girl even seeing me again, I should think. Anyway, it's Challoner's move now. I'm due on the bridge.
I've talked to your friend Kendall, Sharon.
Father, we've been over this time and time again.
But obviously the matter isn't settled. I ask you, my dear Sharon, how can you expect me to take this latest infatuation of yours seriously?
It doesn't matter how you take it, Father.
I disagree.
You can go on to Jamaica alone. I'm leaving the ship at Panama. I'm asking Dirk to take me back to England with him.
Really?
I watched you today when Dirk went after Cregan. You were hoping that Cregan would make him fall.
I beg your pardon.
It showed in your eyes. And when Dirk persuaded him to come down from the mast, you realized that your last chance of getting rid of Dirk had gone.
Sharon, if you have of whom I approve, not some jumped-up little...
Stop it! I'm glad I came with you on this voyage, Father. Glad that I was able to see you for the man you really are, for the first time. You'll have your share of the wearing and fortune. I don't want one penny of it. I want to escape from the kind of life I've always known with you. The hatred of other people, the constant reminders that you hold an army rank, the excuses for your drunkenness.
That's quite enough.
No, Father. You've bullied and blustered for as far back as I can remember. How much worse will it be when you've got enough money to back up your impossible demands? I want no part of it, Father.
You mean you'd give up your future with me, with your security assured, simply to marry a man like Kendall?
If he'll marry me, yes.
You mean that part of it is not yet settled, eh?
Between us, it's settled. But I wonder when he'll start to realize that I'm your daughter. I shouldn't like to marry into a family like ours.
You'd better go, Sharon. And if you leave the ship at Panama, or try to, I'll have you brought back by force if necessary. You are coming on to Jamaica whether you like it or not. The situation is impossible, my dear doctor. You must see that. What could a fellow like Kendall offer my daughter, eh?
If you really want to know, Major Challoner, I'll tell you. We've all watched you pretty closely on this voyage. I think there isn't a person aboard who wouldn't be glad to see the last of you. We've watched you do your best to make Sharon share your unpopularity and watched you hate it because there was something you couldn't achieve.
Now listen to me, Lola.
You've hindered Kendall's investigations at every turn. You've changed places with Tuker, Major Challoner. When we left Sydney, there wasn't a soul aboard who could stand that little fellow, but I think I speak for all of us when I say that I prefer his company to yours at any time.
If you've quite finished...
I haven't. Not yet. You asked my opinion, I'm giving it to you. I don't have to put up with you after tomorrow, Major Challoner. I'm leaving the ship the moment we reach Panama.
Leaving? You mean you're going to sacrifice all that money?
Yes, Challoner. You never know. You might be able to talk Werriman's executors into letting you have it.
Dr. Lawler, I will not...
In tackling Kendall, you've bitten off rather more than you can chew. Marrying Sharon is the kindest thing he could do for her. In time, she might learn to forget you. Good night, Major Challoner.
I didn't know then that the quiet Dr. Lawler had crossed swords with Major Challoner. My thoughts were on Panama and the end of this voyage, this passage of the Tangmar.
Secure forward lines.
All secure, sir.
Secure aft.
Secure aft.
Panama, Mr. Kendall. Panama. Mr. Kendall, have the second engineer come to the bridge. I want to get refueled and bunkered and make for Jamaica without delay.
Captain Goddard had no sooner tied up than he was making plans to get out of Panama fast. I could understand his point of view completely. Finish the voyage to Jamaica and wash his hands of the passengers who stood to gain a fortune under the terms of Victor Fetterman's will. Years before, during my merchant service, I'd enjoyed harboring at Panama. There'd been 100 ways to pass the time in that heat-smitten town, but not this time. Panama, for me, went one thing, and he was waiting for us. I watched the elegant figure of Colonel Hacking move forward and start to climb the gangplank. Below decks, I had the killer he'd sent me to find. But 3 people had died in that search.
Nice morning, Kendall. You free?
Yes, sir.
Let's go below then, shall we? I'd like to talk to you.
Yes, right, sir. This way.
I suppose you've still got the fellow I'm looking for.
Yes, sir.
Bit of trouble, I believe.
You haven't lost your ability to understate the case, I see, sir.
Good morning, Mr. Kendall.
Hello, Tuker. You going ashore?
Yes, one of the crew just told me there's a most interesting curio shop. I thought I'd take back something rather special for Martha. Will you excuse me?
Yes, of course.
Tuker, a poisoner, eh? Looks harmless enough.
There was a time when I didn't think so, sir.
I'm always doubtful of suspecting men with criminal pasts, Kendall. It's easy to fall into that trap.
Yes, sir.
Who's Martha?
His wife, sir. She came aboard at Sydney before we sailed. An enormous woman, most insistent that we should look after Tuker to the best of our ability.
And you've done so. Good man.
Down here, sir. My cabin's just forward.
Ah, Kendall. I was looking for you. I'm just going ashore.
Oh, Colonel Hacking, Dr. Lawler.
Oh, yes. How do you do?
How do you do?
You won't change your mind, Martin?
I don't think so. I'm all packed. I was just coming to find you and say goodbye.
You leaving the ship?
Yes, Colonel. Dirk can explain the reasons to you if he thinks they're important enough.
You realize, of course, that unless you arrive in Jamaica aboard the Tangmar, you automatically...
Yes, I'm well aware of that, Colonel. Goodbye, Dirk.
Martin.
If ever you're in Sydney, Kendall, don't forget to look me up.
No, I won't.
Well, Colonel Hacking, I'm afraid this is very much hail and farewell.
Listen, Martin.
I'm sorry, no time, I'm afraid. I have a car waiting to take me to the airport. So, goodbye, Dirk.
None of my business, really, Kendall, but he must have a pretty strong reason to give up his share of that £1 million.
He has, sir. Ilona Fedorov was his... They were going to be married.
I see.
Just along this companionway, sir.
I want to hear the whole story, Dirk, right from the start. I hope you got all your facts right.
Yes, sir.
Why did it take you so long to get onto Cregan?
Well, because I made a bad mistake, sir. I suspected every other man on this ship but Cregan at one time or another. The skipper, Challoner, Dr. Lawler, all of them. But Cregan, no. After you, sir.
Thank you. And another thing... Oh, you've got a visitor, I see, Kendall.
What? Well, what do you want, Challoner?
To meet the illustrious Colonel Hacking. And a feeling you'd bring him down here.
Major Challoner, I take it. Look, I'm a little occupied at the moment. If you could come back...
I'm afraid this won't wait, Colonel. You see, your man Kendall, having arrested his murderer, now intends
Major
to...
Challoner, our personal differences are no concern of Colonel Hacking.
But they are. It must concern him when one of his officers oversteps the bounds of good manners. That carries on a shipboard flirtation with the daughter of one of the people he came aboard to suspect.
Why don't you come to the point, Major Challoner? I'm not here to listen to your opinion of what constitutes good manners.
I will, Colonel Hacking. To be brief, then, Mr. Kendall, much against my wishes, has been seeing my daughter Sharon. I've warned him to stay away from her. He's filled her head with a lot of nonsense about getting married. Now, I'm dead set against Kendall, and he knows it.
Exactly what has this to do with me?
At least I meet you across the bridge of our mutual rank, Colonel. I should think you will be the first to appreciate that when my daughter marries, if she marries, it will be to an army man.
Oh, I see.
That's all I wish to say, Colonel. I'm sure you'll be able to see my point of view and send Kendall about his business. It's a nice place, Panama. Just hot there.
Delightful fellow.
Isn't he?
I have a feeling that yours is going to be an eventful story, Kendall. Let's have it, eh?
Listen, Colonel.
I've tried to instill into you and the rest of my staff that a woman in any shape or form means trouble of one kind or another. Is she attractive?
Yes, sir.
More's the pity.
I intend to marry her, sir.
That makes it even more of a tragedy.
Oh, sir,
You were always regarded as one of Colonel Hacking's bright young men. When did you stop living up to that label?
Colonel Hacking...
Oh, you sit down, boy. I want to hear the story of your voyage. Oh, and Kendall, you can leave out all reference to your romantic interludes. All right, now let's have it. The Tangmar leaves Sydney Harbour with you, ensconced as chief officer, and somewhere aboard is a murderer.
Then, due entirely to Dr. Lawler, who'd maintained for some days that our theory of greed being the motive was wrong, I realized that the message Cregan had handed me, purporting to come from you, had been a fake. I tackled Mulcahy, the wireless operator, with it, and at that moment, Cregan came into the wireless cabin. The jigsaw clicked into place as I remembered him telling me that he had a son. As you know, that son was named Peter. His wife's maiden name had been Slavin. She'd gone back to using it when she left Cregan.
And so revenge had been the motive. That was where we were all wrong.
Revenge and the fact that Cregan hated Wherryman.
What?
Well, after he decided I should go overboard that night and lined up Mulcahy to help him, he told me the reason for his broken marriage. Wherryman had once traveled on the same ship that Cregan was serving on. At that time, Cregan's wife and young son were with him. You can guess the rest.
I see. How did you never come to put Cregan in the picture earlier?
Well, I accepted the fact that he spent his every available moment in the engine room. And he listened sympathetically as I discussed the problems I was up against with him and offered to help in any way he could. I fell for that hook, line, and sinker.
Do you remember my telling you in my office in London when I briefed you on the case that everyone on this ship was a suspect?
Yes, I remember.
3 people died because you chose to forget that fact,
Yes,
Kendall.
but Colonel Hacking, I...
Don't think I'm being wise after the event. I am.
Well, I departed from your instructions in one other way, Colonel Hacking.
How was that?
I was forced to tell the passengers that I was with Interpol. I was getting nowhere fast until I had the authority of Interpol to back up my questions.
If that's to try and point out that I was wrong, too, then it won't wash, my boy. You were the man on the spot, and it was up to you to make the decisions as to what had to be done. But I'm very grateful to you. It means that Interpol has scored neatly over Scotland Yard, and that's what I set out to achieve. Peter Slavin had been killed by a person or persons unknown. Well, we not only got his killer, we got Cregan. Which reminds me, Kendall, let's go and have a word with him. I want to hear the story from him. Well, Kendall, I'm ready to leave. Cregan's gone ashore under guard. We got our case. I'll see you in England when you get back from Jamaica.
What you mean I'm to...
When I told you to take over this case, you were leaving London on holiday, as I recall. Well, that's how you should regard the rest of this voyage. A holiday. Until you get to Jamaica, anyway.
Colonel Hacking, what are you cooking up?
I'm trying to save you from making a fool of yourself, my lad, that's all.
Colonel,
Oh, and you needn't worry about Miss Challoner leaving the ship here. I've had a word with her. She will stay aboard.
Oh?
I'm amazed to find you show such good taste, Kendall.
Where did you see Shah?
I met her below decks. She was packing, I think.
But why the devil is it so important that I go on to Jamaica? I mean, hang it all. My part in this is finished, Colonel.
I'm taking Cregan back to England. By the time you arrive, I shall have the entire case prepared. He's as mad as a March hare, of course.
Why do I have to go to Jamaica?
Oh, yes. You know that firm of solicitors, Brancher and Smith, who handled the Wherryman estate?
Yes.
I'd like you to be there when the will is read out.
But that's nothing to do with Interpol.
No. There are 3 beneficiaries left, 2 if you discount Dr. Lawler, and £1 million to share between them. It's a lot of money.
Oh, don't tell me we're back to that again.
No, I didn't mean that. Supposing, for the sake of argument, that money doesn't exist.
I stood there for a moment, watching Colonel Hacking as he grinned at me. I knew he'd tell me what was on his mind in his own good time. But suddenly, I had the feeling that the climax was yet to come in this passage of the Tangmar. Colonel, are you trying to tell me that this business of Wherryman's will, the £1 million he left to be divided between the 6 beneficiaries, the business of them all taking passage on the Tangmar, are you saying it's a hoax? Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Come on, bosun, jump to it. Get those stores below, man. I want the hatches secured in 30 minutes. I'm granting no shore leave until this ship is ready for sea again.
I was standing with Colonel Hacking at the rail of the Tangmar, watching the harbourside activity. I could hear Captain Goddard yelling orders in the background as the stores for our run to Jamaica were slung overside and packed below. Down on the wharf, Cregan, the chief engineer, with his hands manacled, was being hustled into a waiting police car. And I'd always thought the sight of that happening would spell the end of my interest in the voyage. But Hacking had other ideas. Out of the blue, he'd casually stated that I should remain aboard for the last stage of the voyage. Colonel Hacking inserted a cigarette in the ivory holder he invariably used, puffed for a moment contentedly, and then continued.
I didn't say it was a hoax, Kendall. I said it might be. If it is, then I think you should be there when Challoner and Tuka discover the fact.
Why?
I would hate to have to answer for Challoner's behavior under a shock like that. It's obvious the man thinks of himself as a millionaire or close to it even now.
But do you have any proof, Colonel? Is there anything you've learnt since I left England that I don't know?
I've learnt a number of things, Kendall. That firm, Brancher and Smith, who are handling the estate, have been in pretty close touch with me ever since Slavin's death.
And?
There's not the slightest doubt the ferryman was a millionaire. We both know there's not the slightest doubt that he was eccentric. His passion for macabre practical jokes and so on. See what I mean?
No.
Willis, haven't you got anything better to do than lean against that ventilator? Get moving, you lazy swabber. Have you scrubbing decks for the rest of the voyage?
Oh, Skipper, you're blasted out.
What was that, Willis?
Nothing, Skipper. I just said it was blasted hot.
You'll find it hotter still if you don't pull your weight.
Did Goddard ever serve in sail?
Colonel Hacking, just what's on your mind?
I have a feeling, Kendall. I can't really put it into words, but it's there just the same. I've been through that will of Ferryman's. I don't like it.
Why not? It seems pretty straightforward.
I hope it is. But if there's any funny business, if Brancher and Smith have bad news for your passengers, then I think you'd better be there.
And that's all you're going to say?
That's all there is to say. What's another week or so to you, anyway? They tell me that all young lovers find Jamaica fascinating.
And if the will doesn't hold up, what's my job?
To make sure that it doesn't cause any further tragedy. Oh, by the way, I've had Jones and Mulcahy sent ashore. They'll keep Cregan company on the way home. You know, Kendall, after Miller was killed, Cregan had the perfect foxhole, Miller's cabin. Half the time he was supposed to be in the engine room, he was waiting in Miller's cabin for his next victim. Pity you didn't think to lock it.
Well, I'm not making excuses, sir.
No, I know that, Dirk. Give me a murder in the heart of London any time. Here you had an abundance of suspects in a confined space, none of them with alibis that would stand up. Taken by and large, you did a very good job.
Supposing I told you it would be my last job, sir?
Tell me again when you arrive back in England, then I'll listen to you. Well, I'd better be going ashore, Kendall. I'd say your captain was anxious to get underway.
He wants to get through the canal as fast as possible.
Oh, I saved you one unpleasant chore, by the way.
What was that, sir?
Lee Blake's father. I told him about his son.
Oh. How did he take it?
Pretty well. Looked up at me from behind that great desk of his in his shipping office, and then went on talking into the phone about a cargo that was overdue.
It doesn't sound to me as if he...
Don't say as if he cared, Kendall. He cared all right, but he wasn't going to let me see how much. You know, I'm not a vindictive man, but it makes me curl up inside to think that Cregan won't hang. A man commits 3 murders and then becomes a burden on the state for the rest of his natural life. Goodbye, Kendall. Oh, By the way, I saw an odd thing here in Panama yesterday. Cricket match. I've no idea who won. Ended in a brawl. Funny. Well, good luck with the girl, old man. You'll gain a positively frightening father-in-law.
But, Colonel, about that will.
You keep your eyes open and your ear close to the ground. You have not heard the last of Victor Ferryman yet, not by a long shot.
What the devil?
Mr. Kendall, if you've quite finished your little chat, I'd like you to remember you're supposed to be my chief officer. But this boy is at least...
Oh, Senor Pepe. By the way, did you have any trouble with Captain Goddard?
No, senor. He was only too glad to obtain another passenger. He said I could have my choice of cabins, that there were 4 vacancies.
Yes.
Senor Major, I'm indeed grateful for this opportunity to cross the Caribbean again. And with you paying all my expenses, why should I have the faintest of qualms? But why? Huh? Why, senor?
Well, perhaps I wish to be advised on local customs. After all, I may be staying here in the Caribbean some time. I shall be able to afford it, and what's more...
For such a service, there are plenty of tourist offices, senor Major. One does not usually approach a private detective agency.
Well, if you don't care for the job...
Oh, I wish only to know what I am to do.
Well, your agency informed me that you had plenty of experience in the kind of work I wish you to do. Protecting my daughter from the attentions of certain fortune hunters.
Of course. You know, when the American tourists come to the Caribbean, I'm a very busy man. Panama is full of unscrupulous people who pay attention to heiresses in the hope.
I am not referring to Panama. I'm referring to someone aboard the Tangmar.
Oh. An officer, I suppose. They are always the ones.
An officer, yes. Dirk Kendall. It will be your job to see that he is never alone with my daughter. She was to leave the ship at Panama, but for some reason she changed her mind. Obviously because Kendall, too, was remaining aboard. I want you to make friends with my daughter. Take her mind off this fellow.
Well, Senor Pepe is the right man for you to have approached in so delicate a matter. Now, how far should I go?
Far enough to make Kendall realize that he's wasting his time. Sharon is a gal who will one day be worth a fortune. Kendall is a pauper. By the time we sail, I want you to be at Sharon's side constantly.
Well, that will not be hard. Pardon the question, senor, but is she, is she attractive?
Kendall appears to find her so.
Good. A man should enjoy such an occupation. And in this part of the world, a Latin can compete with a uniform very successfully, I find.
Pepe, let's get one thing completely straight. This is a job. The whole purpose of hiring you will be defeated if my daughter should...
fall in love with me? Well, you can safely leave that to Pepe. The fond farewell when the time comes is my forte. The subtle hint that I am not worth...
Can we leave it at that?
Of course, senor. You can forget this, Senor Kendall. By the time we reach Jamaica, he will have ceased to exist. In your daughter's romantic mind, that is.
I can hardly believe it, Mr. Kendall. A few more days and we arrive in Jamaica. Panama is behind us. And the man Cregan. Do you know, I feel just as if I could see that money right there in front of me now.
Really?
I've been looking everywhere for you, Mr. Kendall, since we left Panama. I wanted to show you the gift I had brought to Martha. Could you spare the time to step down to my cabin?
Tuka, I've been on the bridge for hours, if you don't mind.
Oh, you're tired, of course. Then let me tell you about it. You see, Martha collects small animals, little china animals of every kind. And she's always wanted so much to own a lifelike cobra, with the fangs ready to strike.
Whatever for?
I don't know, really. There's no accounting for a woman's taste, is there? I should hate to have to look at a cobra very long myself. But I found one. Quite amazingly lifelike, too. The fangs are bare as the snake prepares to strike. Why would she want to own a thing like that? Her place for it's all ready. It's in her china cabinet. Whenever she dusts her pieces, she reminds me about it.
Well, what does she say?
Always the same thing. This, Eddie. She often calls me Eddie, you know, when we're alone. This is where we will keep the snake. And do you know something? Oh, Mr. Kendall. Well, I've just had a dreadful thought.
You have?
It couldn't be because of me, could it? I mean, because of my past.
Well, I hope not, Tuka.
It's to serve as a reminder, not mirth. Oh, do I look like a cobra to you, Mr. Kendall?
Well, not a China one, anyway. Tuka, just supposing that when you get to Jamaica, you found... No, it doesn't matter.
Found what?
Nothing. Just thinking aloud, that's it.
Dirk, I've got to talk to you.
Well, what's wrong, Shark?
Well, I'll take myself off. Good night, Miss Challoner. Oh, dear, a cobra just waiting to strike. But Mother knows I wouldn't poison her.
Dirk, ever since we left Panama, I've been trying to get a moment alone with you. Every time I start to look for you, this Senor Pepe appears.
The fellow who came aboard at Panama?
Yes. It's as if he didn't want me to talk to you, Dirk. As if there was some scheme to prevent me seeing you.
He's coming now.
Senorita Challoner, I wondered where you had got to. Your father suggests that we join him for an after-dinner drink. May I take your arm?
Senor Pepe, Miss Challoner is busy at the moment. And unless you want that stupid smile wiped off your face, you'll stop annoying her. Do you understand? We were a few hours out from Panama, and ahead of us lay Jamaica, Savannah Lamar, and the Wherryman Will. But before we reached Jamaica, I had the feeling that the smooth, self-assured Senor Pepe would cause trouble on this passage of the Tangmar.
Annoyed, senorita? You must be under some misapprehension, senor. I bring to her only the message of her father. He would like us both to join him in his cabin. How can this annoy you, senorita?
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
I'm tired of being followed, Senor Pepe. Ever since we left Panama, you've hardly left me alone for a moment. When we sailed, you were a perfect stranger. That's how I wanted to be when we reached Jamaica.
It was the evening of the day following our departure from the Canal Zone, and the Tangmar rode smoothly on the slight swell of the Caribbean Sea. Colonel Hacking had insisted that I remain aboard for the run to Jamaica, and that I be present when the Wherryman Will was read in the presence of the remaining beneficiaries. But at Panama, a certain Senor Pepe had come aboard for the last stage of the voyage, and it was obvious that he'd been pestering Sharon. I looked at the smooth-featured face adorned with the ghost of a moustache and the white, even teeth of Senor Pepe, and he filled the bill. A gigolo. And Sharon was the only woman aboard. But even then I had the suspicion that somewhere behind Pepe's insistence, I could detect the unsubtle hand of Major Challoner.
Shall we go, senorita? You will excuse us, of course, Mr. Kendall.
I think that the lady made herself quite clear, Pepe. Vamos. Do I make myself clear?
Senor,
Oh, and Pepe. Just why are you going to Jamaica?
A holiday only. I like to travel.
On the Tangmar?
Well, my cabin is comfortable enough.
You appear to have struck up a friendship with Major Challoner darn quickly.
Well, with only the Major and Mr. Tucker aboard, that is not difficult.
You may not be aware of the fact, but Miss Challoner and I are to be married.
My congratulations, senor. Senorita, I had no idea. The Major didn't mention it.
That's not completely surprising.
Well, I trust I have not offended you too deeply, Senorita. I apologize.
Senor Pepe,
Sharon, we're detaining Senor Pepe. He has an appointment with your father. Good night, Senor.
Oh, good night, Mr. Kendall, Senor Sharon. My apologies again. I should not wish to intrude.
Sharon, did you see Pepe come aboard?
Yes.
Goddard told me he'd asked for a berth.
And since then, he spent every available moment making himself agreeable to me. That is, when he's not with my father.
He seems an odd fellow for your father to know.
Foreigners to father have always been the bottom of the barrel. He's convinced that the world should be made up of Englishmen.
Oh, let's forget him. What do you think of hacking? I believe he had a chat with you.
I felt like a specimen under a microscope. But I think he approved.
He'd better.
Why did he want you to go on to Jamaica?
Or didn't he tell you that?
No. He came to my cabin as I was packing to go ashore, pointed out that as you were remaining aboard, it was rather a waste of time. I don't think he really dislikes women at all.
He's probably scared stiff of them.
Dirk, I can't believe it's over. That we can stand up here on deck and know that we're quite safe. Know that there's no one watching our every move. Even they sound different, comforting.
Sharon, supposing you were to find that your father wasn't going to inherit a fortune after all.
What do you mean?
Would you still feel the same way about marrying me? About leaving him?
But he is going to inherit a fortune. Why do you ask a question like that?
That doesn't answer my question.
Well, it's a silly question. Of course I'm not going to remain with him. I couldn't now.
That's all I wanted to hear. You happy, Sharon?
Oh, wonderfully. But I can't help feeling a little guilty that I'm so happy.
Guilty?
Because of Alona and Dr. Lawler.
Oh. Did you see him to say goodbye?
No.
He flew back to Sydney from Panama.
And now there are only two of them. 2 men to inherit £1 million between them.
Yes, I hope so.
Dirk, what do you know? That's the second time that you've...
Nothing, Sharon. Forget it. I don't know anything. I'm only hoping that Colonel Hacking didn't either.
Senor Major, I think you're wasting your time and my own in this matter. Your daughter has very quickly made me realize that my attentions are unwelcome. I think she will marry this Senor Kendall in spite of you.
I'm paying you to see that she doesn't, Senor Pepe. And you remember that. I didn't pay for your passage to Jamaica only to get your advice.
What do you have against this man, Major Challoner? He appears to me to be a much pleasanter person than our first conversation led me to expect. I think if the young senorita was my daughter, I would not object to such a union.
I have had quite a few weeks to form my opinion of Kendall. I think you have known him for 2 days.
I talked with him only once, just now. I would suggest that you increase my fee if I am to continue to work for you.
Why?
It could be dangerous, and I have a decided aversion to being physically hurt.
You mean you're afraid of Kendall?
One must be practical in these matters. He's a well-built young man. I had the feeling just now that he would not hesitate to use his fists should I continue to take up your daughter's time.
Well, that's too bad. We made a bargain and I'm sticking to it.
Pity. A great pity. At heart, you know, I'm very romantic. I like to see young people in love. It warms me. And the Caribbean is such a magnificent setting for such affection.
Now, look here, if you're trying to back out now, Senor Pepe...
Not at this very moment. Tell me, Major, what will you do with your portion of the Wherryman estates?
How did you know about that? I didn't tell you.
No, not you, Major Shalander, but the newspapers in Panama were full of the story of the Tangmar and his passengers. That's really why I accepted this employment you offered.
And now you want more money. But if I don't pay you...
What do you think your daughter would say if I told her the reason you brought me aboard? What do you think Senor Kendall would do, huh?
You blackmailing...
Oh, Major, please. We are business associates. Such language between us is unwelcome. I can remove Senor Kendall from your daughter's affections, but it will need careful planning. And to take that amount of trouble, I need much more money.
And I can't pay any more. At least not until I collect my share of the Wetherman's fortune.
I see. If anything happened to you between here and Jamaica, Mr. Tucker would become a very wealthy man, would he not?
What are you hinting at?
The difference that £500,000 might make to a man's thinking.
Come in.
Oh, good evening.
What do you want, Tucker? Can't you see I'm engaged?
Oh, Senor Tucker, my name is Pepe. I've been wanting to shake the hand of a man who is so shortly to be so wealthy.
How do you do? I can hardly believe it myself. I suppose they'll be waiting for us out on the wharf, Major, and we shall be driven straight out to Savannah Lamar.
Ah, no. It will be then that your troubles will start, Senor. The moment you receive that money, you will be in danger.
Oh, why?
Well, the Caribbean is a hunting ground for the worst kind of criminal. And a man with £500,000 is bait that even a pleasant criminal would find hard to resist.
Then I shall hire a bodyguard.
My point exactly. My services will be at your disposal.
Well, but now look here, Senor Pepe, I have no
bodyguard. Major Challenger, I find the prospect of working for Mr. Tucker will enchant me much more than my employment with you.
I hadn't really thought. You see, well, until I get the money, I'm a poor man.
Well, I can't wait that long. I'd better start my duties immediately. We shall go to your cabin, Senor.
Oh, will we? But I was just going to take a stroll around the deck.
Then I will escort you.
Senor Pepe, come back here.
It's too late,
I'll
Senor.
pay you more.
You know, you've just offered it and I have refused. You see, our dealings are at an end, Major Challoner. I shall regard your payment of my passage as the settling of our accounts.
I thought you said you didn't like being hurt. You make somebody good.
Well, that wasn't your employ. For Senor Tucker, should the occasion arise, it will be almost a pleasure. Good night, my dear Major. And that is the whole story, Senor Kendall. I was hired to see that you and Miss Challoner were never alone together.
I see. And now you're working for Tucker.
I like him. He's such a pleasant little man.
Now, what exactly is your interest in the Wetherman fortune?
Well, who would not be interested in all that money?
There are 2 men on this ship, each of whom stands to gain £500,000 upon arrival in Jamaica. You came aboard in the employ of one of them, now you're working for the other. I can't believe it's because Tucker appeals to you that much. How long is it since you were in Jamaica?
Only a few weeks ago.
Well, how did you manage to persuade Major Challoner that you were the person he needed? You didn't even know that he would approach a detective agency in Panama.
Well, I followed him there. I spent a few dollars wisely and discovered that he was after certain something. It was not hard.
Why?
Well, I wished to travel aboard this ship to Jamaica without attracting suspicion on the part of either the Major or Mr. Tucker.
For what reason?
To study closely the 2 men involved in the first Wetherman will.
The first?
Exactly, Senor. I am in possession of another will, drawn up by the deceased exactly 2 weeks after the one on which the lawyers Branch and Smith have been operating.
May I see it?
It's a valuable document. I would be foolish to carry it with me.
Well, you have the name of the beneficiary.
We both know who he is, Senor Kendall. He is in conversation with you at this very moment.
I'd misjudged, Senor Pepe. This was no ordinary gigolo. And if he was right, and there was a later will in existence, Major Challoner and Edwin Tucker had traveled halfway across the world for nothing on this passage of the Tangmar. It's my guess you're bluffing, Senor Pepe. If you had a later will of Victor Wetherman's, you would have presented it to Wetherman's lawyers in Jamaica. Just what is your game, Pepe?
Senor Kendall, you are entitled to your opinion, but I assure you that I am not the man to bluff. I am holding a full hand, and when the time's right, I shall play it.
No matter how I looked at it, Senor Pepe did seem to be in the box seat. And as we stood talking on the main deck of the Tangmar, I couldn't for the life of me see just what he hoped to achieve by telling me of his plans. He told me first of the method he'd used to get aboard the Tangmar, and I was really surprised to find that Major Challoner was still trying desperately to prevent Sharon marrying me. But the showdown with Challoner would have to wait. At this moment, with Jamaica only a couple of days away, I had my hands full with this unexpected sequel to an affair that I'd hoped was concluded in Panama.
You wish to know why I'm telling you all this, senor? Well, it's very simple. When the Major and Mr. Tucker discovered that I am to be the fortunate owner of the Huaraman estate, my life may be in danger.
Oh, you want protection, is that it? I thought you were going to protect Tucker.
Well, I can't watch him while I do so. But the Major's a man of different temperament. Who knows what his reaction will be when he finds that he's still a pauper, an ex-army officer struggling to keep up appearances on a modest pension.
You know all about the other beneficiaries, then?
Naturally.
And when exactly do you plan to tell them of your inheritance?
Well, I thought at dinner tonight. Bad news digests best on a full stomach.
If you feel that you might be in danger from either Tucker or Challoner, wouldn't it be wiser to wait until we reach Jamaica?
With a gentleman from Interpol aboard to protect me, I surely have nothing to fear, senor.
Now listen to me, Pepe. You're not leveling with me. If you think Challoner and Tucker have come this far to be cheated out of their inheritance by you, then you better start thinking again. It's not going to happen that way, Pepe. I don't believe there is any second will, and if you take my advice, you'll keep your mouth shut until you can back up what you say with proof. Now, I've got my rounds to take, Senor Pepe. But I'll tell you now, if you start any trouble on this ship, I'll see you in irons by the time we reach Jamaica.
If McLaren hasn't got the hang of those engines by this, he never will have. We've been running at half speed ever since we left Panama.
Don't tell me you want Cregan back aboard, Skipper.
Well, at least he did know those engines, Kendall. I think the new man's afraid of the darn things. Trained in these modern fancy craft where the engines can't go wrong even if they want to. 2 degrees starboard, quartermaster. Watch what you're doing.
Oh, got it, Skipper. Sorry, sir.
Anything to report, Kendall?
Rounds completed, sir. Ship shape below.
Well, then, what's on your mind?
Certain Senor Pepe.
You mean the Latin?
Exactly.
What's he up to?
Well, it's just that he tells me there's a second will in existence.
What?
Leaving the Huaraman fortune to him.
I don't believe it.
Well, I told him I didn't. But I don't know. What could he hope to gain by claiming a thing like that without the will to back it up?
Now, look, Kendall. We'll be in Jamaica in 2 days at the most, if those engines don't pack up. I've had all the trouble I want on this voyage. If Pepe looks like making more, then throw him in the brig.
Well, I told him that, sir, but I think we'd both better be at dinner tonight.
Why?
Well, that's when Senor Pepe plans to break the bad news to Challoner and Tucker. I think we'd better be there when that happens. Major, why did you hire Senor Pepe in Panama?
I wondered how soon you'd find out about that.
Did you honestly think that such a scheme would work?
You told Sharon about it,
No, and I don't intend to. I don't see much point in letting her despise you more than she does already.
You're very sure of yourself, aren't you? You think that you'll marry her no matter how much I object.
While you keep nursing that bottle, you're not offering her a great deal of choice, are you?
I drink when I wish, and when I need your advice on the matter, I shall tell you.
All right, Challoner. But before either of us loses our heads, let's get it straight. You made a bigger mistake than you realized when you brought Pepe aboard this ship. It was the action of a man who refused to face the truth even when it was staring him out. If that's the best you can do to prevent our marriage, then you've lost already. But if bringing that slimy little fool aboard this ship was the best strategy you were capable of, then I'm damn glad I never had to serve on you.
You hate me, don't you?
Oh, look, man.
Now sit down. I said sit down! Help yourself. No? Well, I will. You mentioned serving under me. There's a grim joke in that. It would have been better if no one had ever had to do that. I think that's why I dislike you so much, Kendall. You've seen through me. You've seen the yellow streak that I've tried to hide from everyone. Major Challoner. Major. Why do you think I live in a cottage away from London where I don't have to see the officers I knew walk to the other side of the road when they see me coming? You were right, Kendall. I am afraid. I'm afraid now of losing my share of Wedderman's fortune. And I'm afraid of losing my daughter and having to face myself alone.
Challoner, I don't want
the
to...
The first day I stepped aboard the Tangmar and saw you on the deck, I saw myself in the days when the wherryman knew me in India. Knew the young officer who was climbing the ladder. But that's the humor of a situation that's beyond my control. Wherryman left a share of his fortune to that young man who suddenly became a coward. That young man who grew into a major and who only just missed being court-martialed. They invalidated me out, and I managed to convince myself that it was they who were wrong.
Until you heard that Wherryman had left you a fortune.
Oh, it was all right at first. But as this voyage progressed, I was haunted more and more by fear. The fear that I might be the next one to die. Yes. Underneath that, I almost hoped I would be the next. At least it would mean I wouldn't have to hate myself as I reached out my hands for my share. And my hands will tremble, Kendall, and tremble with greed when I observe them and know that those hands belong to a man who's taking something to which he has no right.
Major.
The officer Wherryman knew is dead. A man who'll collect that money has no right to it. Do you wonder I can't bear the thought of being alone with that knowledge?
Challoner, you've given me a dozen reasons why you need Sharon with you. This time I believe you.
Don't take her from me, Kendall. She's all I have. The one person who remembers me as I used to be.
I'm sorry, Major.
She's so like her mother.
I've got to go, Major.
Do me a favor, will you? Lock the door as you go out.
Why?
I feel safer, that's all. Safer, Kendall.
Captain Goddard, will the Tangmar be sailing straight home for England?
Depends on cargo, Miss Challoner. And I suppose I'll have to find a new first officer, eh, Kendall?
Well, it looks like it, Skipper.
Pity. Still, even if you stayed at sea, I suppose you'd want to be off this ship. Too many unhappy memories.
Well, and some very happy ones, sir.
Perhaps we could sail back with you, Captain. Dirk and myself.
Then I'd never get any work out of him. He'd probably run us aground thinking about you.
I hope you'll both be very happy, Miss Challoner.
Major Challoner, sit down. You know, I have news for you. News that I think you should hear at once.
Senor Pepe, don't be a blasted fool.
You better be sure of your facts, Pepe.
But, senors, I am sure. I thought I had made that quite clear.
If you've anything to say, Pepe, say it and get it over and done with. We'll tell you if we think it's worth that self-satisfied smirk.
Dirk, what is it? What's wrong?
Wait, Sharon.
Suddenly you all look very worried, upset. Tell me, Mr. Kendall, did you ever hear of the strange practices of our country? Voodoo?
Voodoo? Well, of course, but what...
I'm coming to that, senor. Until his death, Senor Wherryman had been a fine figure of a man. He strode through his plantations at Savannah La Mar like a man of half his 80 years. And then he died quite suddenly. And in those last few days of his life, he was a wasted, shrunken caricature of himself.
Will you get to the point, Pepe?
Or you mean the will? Yes, of course. But first I wish to tell you how Senor Wherryman came to sign it. I worked for him in his house. I give him my love, my affection, years of service. Always he had promised me that when he died, I should be treated as the son he had never had. And then one day he returned from Jamaica to tell me that he had drawn up his will. He was laughing, and he told me of the beneficiaries and why I had left them his money.
Go on, Pepe.
I asked him for my reward, the money he had promised me for so long, and he laughed. He patted me on the head and said that perhaps he would give me a glowing reference before he died, so that I would get another job. Within a few weeks, he was dead, and only I was there to tend him. Pepe, the despised man of mixed blood.
You mean you killed him?
The doctor said he died from natural causes. But before he died, he wrote another will. He left everything to me. To me! And I swore that each of you, each of those to whom he had left part of his fortune, would know this. Know it when you were so close. Know it and live to beg me to share that fortune with you.
So now I knew. Senor Pepe was consumed with hate for the memory of Victor Werrimer. If there was a second will, there was no glimmer of hope for Tucker and Challoner in this passage of the Tangmar.
There are only the two of you now. I had hoped that all six of you would be alive to hear the news together, so that I might watch your faces and see the realization dawn. I am the heir to the Werriman estates. They are mine.
But, Mr. Pepe, there must be a mistake. Surely you're joking. Well, of course, yes, that must be it. You offered me your services to protect me against people who were going to steal my money. Oh, tell me it's all a joke, Senor Pepe, tell me.
Two days out from Panama, and in the dining room lounge of the Tangmar we sat, all of us. Captain Goddard, Challoner, Sharon, and myself, watching the color drain from Tuco's face as he leapt to his feet, pleading with Senor Pepe to reassure him. And Pepe smiled at him, the white teeth glinting beneath the thin black moustache. At least now we knew Pepe's real reason for joining the ship at Panama. And watching the slim, dark-skinned man, I'd been prepared to dismiss as a gigolo. I knew he was enjoying this moment of triumph. Watching him, I could see the ease with which he'd slip off the veneer of civilization and give himself up to the beat of the drums and the voodoo rites of Jamaica. When Major Challoner had brought Pepe aboard, he'd caught himself a tiger.
I demand that you answer me, senor. Is this some horrible joke?
If you're lying, Pepe... You don't believe he's lying, Captain. Neither do I. We've wasted our time, Tuca. We've cringed and lived in fear of our lives on a voyage of death in order to lose now. You're right, Tuca. It is a joke. Don't reach out towards me now, Sharon. I don't need you. Will you excuse me, Captain? I think I'll go to my cabin.
Major Challoner.
Oh, no, Kendall. Stay where you are. Learn the details of the second will. You know, the thing I find most amusing, Captain Goddard.
What?
Who'll pay you now for bringing us across the world? Will Pepe? Will he pay you for a passage? Ask him, Captain Goddard. Rather, go down on your knees and beg him to pay for your wasted voyage.
What's wrong, Pepe? Didn't the Major behave as you thought he should? Didn't he let you have the moment of triumph you've been waiting for?
Well, when the shock of realization is over, then he will come to me. And you, Senor Tucker, you wish to make a bargain with me?
There'll be no bargains, Pepe.
You doubt that I have the second will? Is that it? You doubt the truth of my story? Well, I will show you. I will show all of you. You can read it for yourselves.
I thought that swine said he didn't have the will with him.
He said it was in a safe place. I thought if he got worked up enough, he'd produce it.
Do you think he's telling the truth, Dirk?
I don't know.
It can't be true. I refuse to believe it.
Hold your horses, Tuka. Let's see the will first, huh?
Dirk, I'd better go to my father.
I think he'd rather be alone, Sharon.
No matter what's been between us, Dirk, between my father and me, I know he needs me now. I'm the only person he can turn to.
All right, Sharon.
I shan't be long, Dirk.
Yeah, women. There's no understanding them, Kendall.
No, Sharon's right, Skipper. He does need her now. And after what I know about Challoner, he just gave the greatest performance of his life.
How can you sit there talking normally? Oh, this is dreadful, dreadful. All those others, they died just because of this will of Wherryman's. And now to find out...
I said wait until we've seen the will, Tuka. Pepe will be back with it very soon.
There's no need for you to leave the others, Sharon. I much prefer to be around just now anyway.
You don't mean that, Father.
Sharon, I talked with Kendall this afternoon. And in view of Pepe's news, it seems that I talked just in time. You know, I'm almost relieved about Wherryman's will.
What?
And the reason doesn't matter. Not now. Perhaps someday Kendall will explain it to you, but I doubt it. He's not likely to repeat what I told him about myself.
Shall I pour you a drink, Father?
No, my dear. Oh, quite suddenly, it's not too difficult to live with myself. Now there'll be no question of being tempted when I reach Jamaica. Oh, Sharon, it's not a pretty picture that I've painted for you since we left Sydney or any other time, I'm afraid. I dare say I can get a housekeeper into the cottage.
Does that mean that you don't intend to stop my marriage to Dirk?
Could I have stopped it, eh? Now, could I? You know, it's an old axiom of military tactics that when you can't advance any further in the face of overwhelming odds, you consolidate.
But why has it taken this long to convince you?
Why? Well, because I'm a stubborn, bad-tempered and vicious old man. Now, face to face with what should be the greatest catastrophe of my life, losing a fortune when it was almost within my hands, I can only feel relief.
I never heard you speak this way before.
Which is all the more reason why I should marry that damn fool as fast as you can. You had every right to expect to hear me talk gently. Every right. After Kendall had gone this afternoon, I found myself looking at Major Challoner. It seemed that once, having started to talk, I couldn't stop. I didn't much like what I found either, Sharon.
But that money meant everything to you.
Oh, you're right, my girl. It did. It meant that I'd be able to buy the respect I forfeited a long time ago. But I couldn't buy you, Sharon. Go on back to the others, my girl.
I'd like to stay and talk to you. It seems I never have before.
All right. Stay. But if you dare at any stage to give me that guff about not losing a daughter, etc., I'll go back to the bottle.
I won't, Father. I promise you.
Oh, that gloating swine is taking a mighty long time to find that will, Kendall.
He's enjoying himself. Enjoying keeping us on tenterhooks.
Just what went wrong with this voyage, Kendall? Why did it have to be my ship? First a blasted maniac, and now Pepe talking about voodoo.
I just don't know how I shall ever face Master after this. She counted so much on the money.
Keep your head, Tuka. If Victor Wherryman's sense of humor was as twisted as I think it was, Pepe's in for a surprise.
I don't understand that, Kendall.
Ah, so you're still here, huh? Waiting for me. Now, before I show you this document, you still have time to make a bargain, Senor Tuka. Now, if you will come to terms with me, I will forget this will. All I ask is half of what you will get under the terms of the old will. Only half, Senor Duca, and half from Major Challoner. And
No, Pepe. For all we know, that might be a blank piece of paper.
Oh, you think so, huh? Then you look at it. Here. Try to explain that away, senor. Observe the date.
Let me see that, Kendall.
Just a minute, Tuca. The last one on testimony with me is I, Victor Whitterman, being of sound mind, do on this date...
Please, Kendall, what does it say?
Come on, man.
Pepe's right. This document does leave the entire Whitterman estate to you.
What?
No.
I'm afraid so.
Now you see.
All too clearly, Pepe. You've been very clever. But then so was Whitterman. And he liked nothing better than to have the last laugh. You say he was on his deathbed when he made this will?
He was only alive for a little while after he signed that.
Do you remember what he said when he signed it?
Of course I remember. He said, Pepe, you will be taken care of. You will be looked after. Of that you may be sure.
I see.
Then there's no hope, Kendall. No hope at all.
On the contrary, Tuca, Pepe's right about the will. It's dated later than the one that brought you out here. Here, take it, Pepe.
Thank you, senor.
Take good care of it and present it to Brancher, and Smith.
But I have said...
They'll laugh at you, Pepe. Just as Whitterman was laughing. Laughing when he drew that will up.
What did you say?
Didn't you realize that that will would need witnessing? It's a useless piece of paper, Pepe. Just as Whitterman knew it would be. What could you be expected to know of wills? It was enough for you that it was drawn up after the other one. But it wasn't witnessed, Pepe, and there's no court in the world that would accept it.
Witness? Now, what does that mean?
That it had to be signed in the presence of witnesses who would also sign it.
You're lying to me.
It was Whitterman who did that. Did you think he'd let you get away with it? Why, he's probably laughing at you at this very moment, Pepe.
He cheated me.
Well, since you brought about his death, or thought you did, I'd say you were just about even, Pepe.
Then we're safe, Kendall. The money's ours.
Look out, Dirk. He's got a knife.
I'll kill you for this, senor.
Drop it, Pepe. Drop it.
Get back against the wall, Tuca.
But we should keep Kendall.
Keep out of it, both of you. We've had this coming for a long time, Pepe. This one is for Victor Whitterman. Well, I'll dump him in the brig, Skipper. Let him cool off before we get to Jamaica.
Dirk, you're bleeding.
It's all right, Sharon. Senor Pepe just found out that will isn't worth the paper it's written on.
Come to my cabin, Dirk. I'll bandage your arm for you. And then I want you to see my father. He's got news for you. Good news.
Go with her, Kendall. I'll take care of Pepe. I have a feeling Challoner is going to like the news you've got for him even more, Kendall.
Ahead of us lay Jamaica. And for Tuca and Challoner, a half share each in £1 million. But as I looked down at Sharon, I wouldn't have traded places with either of them on this passage of the Tangmar.
Secure forward.
Secure forward.
Secure aft.
Secure aft.
Finish with engines, quartermaster.
Passage of the Tangmar. The story of a ship and its cargo of death.
Jamaica, Kendall, and it's over. The voyage I'll spend the rest of my life trying to forget. Bosun, have Senor Pepe brought topside and taken ashore under guard. There's a welcoming committee waiting for him on the wharf.
I could see the local police waiting for Pepe. But I was searching for someone else. The representative of the legal firm of Brancher and Smith, who would escort Major Challoner and Edwin Tucker to Savannah Lamar and take them through the formality of becoming, each one of them, £500,000 richer. 2 days before, after the business with Pepe, I'd talked with Major Challoner, and he'd withdrawn his objections to my marriage to Sharon. But when I'd told the gaunt-faced Major that the will Pepe had boasted of was a useless scrap of paper, he'd refused to believe me. Even now, I wondered if Major Challoner expected to return to England without his share of the Wherryman fortune. Only the firm of Brancher and Smith would be able to convince him. And then, from the bridge, I saw the white-suited, Panama-hatted figure of a man moving towards the gangplank. There was no doubt in my mind that this was the person I most wanted to see.
Ahoy there! May I come aboard?
What do you think he wants, Kendall?
Well, can't you guess, Skipper? Even in that rig-out, he looks as if he's mentally wearing a barrister's wig.
If your name is Brancher, come aboard.
Thank you.
Let's get down on deck and meet him, Kendall.
Right.
Just, what did you say to Challoner, eh? He's been a different man this last couple of days.
I noticed you even let him come up on the bridge.
Well, how did you do it?
Oh, I didn't do anything. Challoner told me something that must have been gnawing at him for years. When he'd spoken of it, he seemed to feel a sense of relief, that's all.
Is that why he's agreed to your marriage to Sharon?
Relief, you mean?
No, you damn fool, so that he'll have a shoulder to cry on. Yours.
Oh, he won't need any shoulders.
Oh, Captain Goddard.
That's right. This is Mr. Kendall, my first officer. And you'd be...
Brancher. Our firm is handling the details of the Wherryman estate. Now, I have a car waiting and not a great deal of time at my disposal, so if I could see the two remaining beneficiaries as soon as possible...
They're in the saloon. I don't think either of them quite had the courage to wait on deck.
Can I see them now?
Of course you can. This way.
Mr. Brancher, there is just one thing before you see them. You've been informed of the kind of voyage we've had.
Dreadful, Mr. Kendall, dreadful.
You can say that again. And it wasn't made any easier by your local boy, Pepe, turning up in Panama.
I could hardly believe my eyes when I was handed your radioed report on that. But you can rest assured that Pepe had nothing to do with Wherryman's death. Half of these mixed bloods still believe in voodoo, but Wherryman died of natural causes.
What makes you so sure?
I saw him shortly before the end.
Well, does that prove anything, Mr. Brancher? Personally, I think Pepe's voodoo might have done the trick.
Oh, you can't be absolutely certain of these matters, of course, but strange things do happen in Jamaica. But I'd prefer to believe otherwise.
Wouldn't we all?
Well, that wasn't my point, Brancher. Tucker and Challoner have both been through a great deal. Unless their claim to the Wherryman estate is watertight, I think you'd better break it very gently.
Mr. Kendall, there is nothing to prevent both of them leaving Jamaica within the next few days with the whole matter settled. The will in our possession, the will that brought them here, is absolutely watertight.
In here, then. Mr. Tucker, Major, this is Mr. Brancher of the legal firm handling the Wherryman estates.
How do you do?
And before we go any further, let me be the first to tell you that your worries are over. A car ride to Savannah Lamar, and you're both in clover for the rest of your lives.
If you gentlemen would get your things together as soon as possible, we can be on our way.
Mr. Kendall, there's no mistake. You're quite positive.
Well, you heard the man, Tucker.
Well, now go and get packed straight away. Excuse me, Mr. Brancher. Gentlemen, I suppose this will be goodbye then, Mr. Kendall.
Yes, it rather looks like it, Tucker.
Then will you do me a last favour, please? I know I've no right to ask it, but I'd be most grateful if you'd accept a small wedding gift from me. That cobra. I don't think, after all, I'll take it home to Martha. Thank you.
Kendall, you'll find Sharon waiting for you in my cabin. I've already said goodbye to her. She'll be going back to England with you.
If you would hasten your departure, Major Challoner,
Young man, you'll wait until I am ready to leave. Is that clear?
Oh, of course, sir. It's only that
If you imagine that I've annoyed and troubled these two gentlemen since we left Sydney in order to be run off my feet by a pompous young pipsqueak now that I've reached Jamaica, you are wrong, sir. Now, go on. I'll be able to join you as soon as I've talked with Captain Goddard and Kendall.
Yes, of course, Major. I assure you that
close the door. Kendall, there's a great deal I have to say. And then again, perhaps it's best left unsaid.
You're here, Major. That's all that should matter to you.
It was all that mattered once, that I should reach here, but not anymore. I won't be in England for your marriage, Kendall. I think I'll stay on here for a while. Perhaps when I do get back, you'll allow me to visit you.
Well, of course, Major.
I realize that the girl's in love with you, but don't you think it's a bad way to begin?
What?
Well, keeping her waiting, you young fool.
Well, goodbye, Major.
Are you flying back to England, Kendall?
Yes, Skipper. On the first available plane.
Captain Goddard, I'm not looking for charity, I can assure you, but without Sharon, I think you know what I mean. Would you be my guest at dinner tonight? At the moment I return from Savannah, Lamar.
I suppose I'll have to be. We seem the only two left.
Thank you, Captain. Well, now I'll go out and bully that legal eagle again. By the time we reach Savannah, Lamar, I can assure you he'll have his wings very thoroughly and severely clipped.
Oh, are we really going back to England, Dirk?
Unless I'm dreaming this flight.
Can we see the harbour from up here?
Yeah. Look, right below us. There she is, the Tangmar. Needs a new coat of paint.
I'm glad, in spite of everything, that I was aboard her.
You better be, Miss Challoner. There's no backing out now.
Well, that cuts both ways.
Do you think I dare? Your father's another man I'd like to have on my trail.
Does it seem awfully silly to tell you that I'm going to miss him? The father I knew at the end of the voyage, I mean.
No, I got to know him too, you know. He finally came out from behind that bristling moustache.
Do you mind if I tell you something?
Go right ahead.
I was furious when I first met you on the Tangmar. You seemed to join the others in admiring Alona Fedorov.
I did not.
Not even a little bit?
Well...
Well?
Not even a little bit.
Liar.
Well, how was I to know that ogre who guarded you day and night was human underneath?
And you bearded him in his den and rescued the princess.
And they lived happily ever after. At least they're going to have a darn good try.
Oh, darling.
Sharon, I'm going to leave Interpol.
You don't have to.
Well, I'll probably have to go to sea in some down-at-heel old tramp. The Tangmar did it. I've got the smell of the sea in my nostrils again. You mind?
Well, providing no one on board has a gun or a will. Agreed?
Agreed. Oh, Sharon. Do you mind being kissed on a crowded plane?
Dobson, don't be a clot. If Kendall's out there, of course I want to see him. Man comes halfway across the world to make his report and... Come in, man, come in.
Well, that sounds as if the weather's worse in here than it is outside, Colonel Hacking.
Don't try to be clever, Kendall. Sit down.
May I sit down, too?
Well, I shouldn't allow you in here, Miss Challoner, but I see by the look in Kendall's eye that I'd better not refuse. Before we exchange any small talk, Kendall, let me bring you up to date. Cregan will never stand trial, that's a certainty. He's in Broadmoor Asylum, mad as a March hare. That wireless operator, Mulcahy, who helped him, is due to stand trial in a few weeks' time, and Jones is going to be our chief witness. I'll need your evidence for that case, too, of course.
Yes, of course, Colonel, but, how the devil did you know about Senor Pepe? What gave you the idea about that second will?
I didn't have a clue, my boy. I had nothing to go on but a vague suspicion that all was not well in Jamaica. It was as simple as that. Call it intuition, if you like.
Oh, isn't that usually the prerogative of the female sex, Colonel Hacking?
Is it? Well, I'm using it now. I have no proof that you intend to marry and leave the service, Kendall.
But I told you I...
Yes, you hinted at it in Panama, but now it's definite, isn't it?
Well,
Good thing, too. I dislike using married operators. They rarely have their mind completely on the job in hand, and Interpol depends on complete dedication, at least my branch of it does. Oh, by the way, I heard from Jamaica this morning that Tucker's on his way back to Australia. Challoner, of course, is remaining there.
Well, do you want my full report now, sir?
I've got most of the facts here. And I'd prefer you to drag yourself away from your fiancé, say, tomorrow morning, so that we can prepare our complete file.
Don't let him bluff you, Sharon. That growling is only for show.
All right, you can buzz off now. I got work to do. Goodbye.
But, Colonel,
Another time, Miss Challoner, because my agents desert me, it doubles my work. Good morning.
Come on, Sharon. Forecast is for squalls.
And close the door as you go out, Kendall.
Listen, Colonel Hacking, I haven't
finished. Neither have I. I wish you all the luck in the world, my boy. Both of you. Oh, and Kendall, I've pulled a few strings. If you want it, there's a first officer's berth on a brand new ship waiting for you. Well, goodbye. I really must get on.
And so ends Passage of the Tangmar by Alan Trevor. As Dirk Kendall, you heard Nigel Lovell. Others in the cast were Major Challoner, Don Pascoe, Ilona Fedorov, Dinah Shearing, Captain Goddard, Gordon Glenwright, as Sharon Challoner, Pat Crocker, Edwin Tuker, Lionel Stevens, Chief Engineer Cregan, Al Thomas, Dr. Martin Lawler, Robert Stewart, Lee Blake, Rick Hutton, Ben Miller, Derek Barnes, Seaman Jones, Stuart Ginn, Senor Pepe, Guy Dolman, and as Colonel Hacking, Ethel Fleming. Passage of the Tangmar was directed by Donald McKay in the Sydney studios of Amalgamated